I've worked as a 911 dispatcher for almost 20 years. That means 2 decades of hearing the very worst moments of people's lives through a headset. Most nights are quiet, calls about noise complaints, drunk drivers, or someone's neighbor playing music too loud. Other nights are hell. Nights where the phone rings non-stop, where every second feels like a coin toss between life and death. But the call I'm about to tell you about, it wasn't like any of those. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't even violent. It was wrong. I still remember the way the shift started. It was a Tuesday, late fall. The kind of night where the building is so quiet that even the hum of the fluorescent lights sounds louder than it should. My partner Dana had called out sick, so I was working the console alone. Just me, the faint buzz of the lights, the soft glow of the monitors, and that endless waiting. I don't mind quiet shifts. In fact, after enough years, you come to crave them. Quiet means people are safe. Quiet means I can sip my coffee, lean back, and just watch the clock crawl. But around 1:17 in the morning, the line lit up. The sound of a 911 call isn't dramatic. It's just a simple beep in your headset, a flash on the screen. But after long silence, it always feels like a jolt. I straightened in my chair, clicked the line, and gave my usual script. 911, what's your emergency? At first, there was nothing. Just a faint static, like when you turn on a radio and it can't find the right station. I was about to repeat myself when I heard it. A tiny, shaky voice. Hello? It was a child, a girl. Her voice was thin, quiet, like she was afraid someone might overhear her. This is 911, I said softly, lowering my tone to match hers. Are you in danger? Can you tell me your name? There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. Then she whispered, "Someone's in the house." My blood went cold. I sat up straight, fingers moving across the keyboard to log the call. "Okay, sweetheart," I said gently. "Where are you right now? Can you tell me your address?" She sniffled, whispering so softly I had to press my headset tighter against my ear. "I'm in my closet." I typed as fast as I could, logging every detail. "That's good. You did the right thing. Stay quiet. Stay hidden. Can you give me your address so I can send police to help you?" There was rustling, a shaky breath. Then she recited an address. "A house on the west side of town." I knew the street. A quiet neighborhood. Nothing ever happened there. I radioed the nearest unit and gave them the location. "Possible home invasion, child hiding inside," I said. My voice was calm, but my heart was thundering. Calls like this, they're nightmares. "Sweetheart," I said, going back to the line. "Police are on the way. Stay very, very quiet. Can you tell me your name?" Another pause. Then, barely audible, "Lily." "Okay, Lily," I whispered. "You're very brave. Just keep talking to me, all right? Do you hear anything right now?" For a moment, all I heard was her shaky breathing. Then came a sound I will never forget. Slow, heavy, footsteps, not hers. They were muffled, distant, moving across creaking floorboards. "He's looking for me," she whispered. I pressed the headset tighter. My hand was gripping the mouse so hard my knuckles turned white. "Don't worry, Lily, just keep still. Don't make a sound. The officers are coming. Can you describe him?" She didn't answer right away. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I swear I could hear them even through her phone. My stomach turned to ice. Then she said, "He doesn't look right." I frowned. "What do you mean, Lily?" The line crackled with static. Her voice trembled. "He's too tall." Something in her voice, something raw, terrified, made my skin crawl. "Lily," I said firmly, "stay where you are. Don't open the door. The police are almost there." But then her breathing changed. It wasn't the shaky, childlike breaths I'd been hearing. It slowed, grew deeper, almost deliberate, and then, in the same small, whispering tone, the voice said, "He's outside the closet." I froze. Every hair on my arm stood on end. "Lily?" I whispered back. "Is he in the room with you?" The breathing was louder now, close, too close. And then, silence. "Lily, are you there? Stay quiet. Officers are almost inside." I heard the faint crackle of my radio. The responding unit said they had just arrived on scene, approaching the house. Relief washed through me. They would get her. They would pull her out, but then I heard it. The sound of a door creaking open, and a low, guttural sound I still can't describe. Not words, Not even a human noise. Just something that made my skin crawl. "Lily!" I hissed into the headset. "Stay on the line. Officers are right there." Nothing. Just silence. The officers reported entering the house. I listened as they moved room to room. My headset pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. They cleared the kitchen. The living room, upstairs, then the radio crackled. "Dispatch, house is empty." No sign of forced entry. No child inside. I sat frozen. My stomach flipped, my mouth went dry. I stared at the address I'd typed into the system. "No, she's there," I said, my voice shaking. She called from inside that house. She said someone was with her. "Negative," the officer said. "House is vacant, abandoned. Looks like it's been empty for years." I felt a chill sweep through me. I looked at the call screen. The line was still open. The timer ticked away. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5. But I heard nothing. No child, no static. Just silence. And then a click. The call ended. I sat there staring at the dark screen. My heart pounded in my chest. I pulled up the call log, desperate to confirm the number, anything I could use. But there was nothing. No record of the call. It was as if it had never happened. I leaned back in my chair, trembling, headset still on, my mind racing. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, some kind of glitch, but deep down, I knew it wasn't, because even now, I can still hear her whispering, right in my ear, like she never really hung up. I didn't sleep the morning after that call. I went home, lay down, and just stared at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her, that tiny shaking voice, that whisper in my ear. Someone's in the house. I kept trying to tell myself it was just a bad dream, or maybe I imagined the whole thing. Dispatchers burn out all the time. Sleep deprivation, stress. It can play tricks on your mind. That's what I told myself. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the memory. The worst part was the silence. The way the line had just ended. No goodbye. No click. Just nothing. It felt like the silence was still there, clinging to me, following me. By the time my next shift rolled around, I was already dreading putting that headset back on. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. Scared of what I might hear again. The first few hours passed without anything unusual. A drunk driver, a noise complaint, nothing I couldn't handle. I even started to relax. Maybe it really had just been some kind of mistake. Then, a little after midnight, the line lit up. I answered like I always do. 911, what's your emergency? At first I heard nothing. Just the faint hiss of static. My chest tightened. It sounded too familiar. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is 911. Do you need help?" That's when I heard it. The same small, trembling voice. "Hello?" I froze. It was her. The same little girl. The same whisper. "Lily?" I asked, my throat dry. "Is that you?" There was a long pause. I thought the line had gone dead again. Then she whispered, "He's still here." My stomach dropped. I could feel sweat beading on the back of my neck. I pulled up the call log, my fingers shaking. The screen showed a number this time, but it flickered, glitching like the digits couldn't decide what they wanted to be. "Lily," I whispered, "where are you calling from? Can you tell me where you are?" The line hissed. Her voice crackled. "I'm in the closet." The words hit me like ice water, exactly the same as before. Same voice, same tone, almost like she was repeating a script. "Okay, stay where you are," I said quickly. "We'll send help." "Don't hang up. Just talk to me. Can you hear anything right now?" Silence, then static. And then my own voice, faint, distorted, but it was me. I heard myself saying, "Can you hear anything right now?" My blood ran cold. "Hello?" I whispered into the headset, and the line whispered it back, twisted and delayed. "Hello?" Not just once. Over and over, my own words, circling back to me through the static. I yanked the headset slightly away from my ear, staring at the monitor like maybe I'd catch it glitching. But the call was still open. Timer ticking away, I forced myself to speak. "Who is this?" Static, then whispers. Not the child, not me. Something else. A chorus of voices layered over one another, all whispering in unison. "Who is this? Who is this? Who is this?" The words twisted into a hiss, then cut out. I gripped the desk to steady myself, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. "Lily, are you there? Can you hear me?" There was another long pause. Then faintly, her voice again. "I hear you." The way she said it made my chest tighten. Not relieved, not comforted, just empty. Like she was repeating words she didn't understand. "Listen to me," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Police can help you, but you have to tell me where you are." "Can you do that?" The line filled with static again. For a second I thought I heard crying, a low, muffled sob. Then my voice repeated back, "Police can help you. Help you, help you." I felt sick. My palms were slick with sweat. This wasn't normal. It wasn't a prank, it wasn't a glitch. It felt like something was using the line, bending it, twisting it. And then the voices changed. Not the little girl, not me. Something deeper, a low, harsh whisper that cut through the static. "Don't hang up." I jerked back in my chair, heart slamming against my ribs. I stared at the call screen. The number flickered again, shifting, the digits blurring until they were unreadable. My headset crackled. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Don't hang up." I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me to disconnect, to rip the headset off and throw it across the room. But some part of me, some awful, frozen part, needed to hear what came next. The static roared, filling my ears. Then, cutting through it, her voice again. "Lily!" "He's right behind me." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Stay still, Lily, don't move. Officers are coming." The line distorted, her voice warping in and out, sometimes replaced by mine, sometimes by the whisper. "Don't move. Stay still. Officers are coming." It was all jumbled, overlapping, like the call itself was breaking apart. And then, clear as day, her voice whispered, "He's in the line." The static exploded in my headset. I ripped it off, tossing it onto the desk, my hands shaking. The sound kept coming, tinny and muffled from the earpiece, like the line was still alive even without me listening. I stared at it for what felt like forever. The call timer kept ticking. 7 minutes. 8. 9. Finally, I forced myself to pick the headset back up. My hands were trembling so bad I almost dropped it. I pressed it to my ear. Silence. And then a child's laugh, soft, distant, not joyful, just wrong. The line clicked. Dead. I sat frozen, staring at the dark screen. The timer reset to 0. No call logged. No record. Nothing. Just me, alone. And the faint echo of my own voice still bouncing around in my head. When you work in dispatch long enough, you learn how to bury things. Bad calls pile up over the years, but you find ways to push them down. You laugh with coworkers, drown yourself in coffee, and keep your voice steady for the next caller. Because if you carry it all with you, it'll crush you. But I couldn't bury this one. I couldn't bury Lily. After that second call, I sat in the dark room long after my shift ended. The monitors were cold blue squares staring back at me. My headset felt heavier than it ever had. I kept expecting the line to light up again to hear that same small voice whispering in my ear. Instead, there was just silence. But silence didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like something waiting. The next night, I went in early. I couldn't help myself. I told the day supervisor I was reviewing call logs, and maybe I even believed that at first. But really, I was looking for proof. Something that told me I hadn't lost my mind. I searched by number, by address, by time of night. I combed through hours of logs. Nothing. No call came from that house. No call ever showed from Lily's number, if it was even real. I dug deeper. I pulled up property records on my personal phone. The house she had named, the address she whispered from her closet, it had been listed as vacant. For nearly 15 years. 15 years. I remember just sitting there, staring at the screen. My chest felt hollow. My hands shook. I kept thinking, who was I talking to? And maybe worse, what was I talking to? The first night I told myself it was stress, some kind of hallucination. But 2 calls, 2 nights in a row, that wasn't stress. That wasn't a trick of the mind. And then there was the recording. Every call that comes through is recorded automatically. The system logs it whether you want it to or not. So, even if the call didn't appear on the list, I thought maybe I could dig into the backup. I found the file where it should have been. Blank. Just dead air. But when I clicked play, I swear to God I heard something. Not Lily's voice. Not mine. A whisper. Right before the silence swallowed the recording, there was a breath. Low, deep, too close to the microphone. It said my name. I slammed the headset off and sat there in the empty room, shaking. I couldn't breathe right. I felt like someone was standing behind me, leaning in close. But there was no one. Just me. Always just me. I should have reported it. That's what protocol demands. But how could I? Hey, boss, I think a ghost is prank calling 911? I would have been sent to mandatory counseling, probably put on leave. So I kept it to myself. But keeping it didn't mean it stayed quiet. That weekend, I had the night off. I thought being away from the console would help. I thought I'd breathe easier at home. But the silence followed me there, too. Around 2 a.m., my phone rang. It wasn't the dispatch line. It wasn't even a number I recognized. Just blank digits, zeros across the screen. I answered without thinking, and I heard it. Static. My chest locked up. I couldn't move. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, waiting. Then a whisper. Don't hang up. I nearly dropped the phone. My heart slammed so hard I felt dizzy. Who is this? I demanded. My voice cracked. The line hissed, distorted. Then, my own words repeated back to me. Who is this? Who is this? Who is this? I hung up. I sat there in the dark with the phone buzzing in my hand, my pulse rattling in my throat. It rang again. Same blank number. I let it go. Straight to voicemail. But no message came through. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When I returned to work the next day, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe someone hacked the system. Maybe a sick prank. I tried to make it logical. Anything but what it felt like. But the fear stayed. That crawling sense of being watched, of not being alone, even in an empty room. And then came the third call. It was nearly 3 in the morning. Dead quiet. I was alone, scrolling through reports just to keep my eyes open. The line lit up. I hesitated. For the first time in 20 years, I hesitated to answer. But duty is duty. So I put on the headset. 911, what's your emergency? Static. My throat tightened. My fingers dug into the desk. Then a whisper. Not Lily this time. Lower. Harsher. You heard her. I froze. The voice continued, broken by static. You listened. Now she's in you. I ripped the headset off. My breathing came fast and shallow, but the voice kept spilling from the earpiece even though I wasn't wearing it. You heard her. She heard you. You're part of it now. I slammed the line dead. The screen went black. Timer reset. No record. No evidence. Just silence. And that's when it hit me. The silence wasn't waiting. It wasn't empty. It was the call itself. The silence was what carried them through. I sat there staring at the headset. My mind raced in tight circles. I thought about Lily's voice, about the whispers, about the way my own words came back to me, warped and broken. I realized I didn't know what was worse, that the calls weren't real, or that they were. Because if they weren't real, I was losing my mind. And if they were real, it meant something was using the lines. Something older than the systems we built. Something that knew how to hide in the silence. The shift ended. I walked out into the gray morning light, but I didn't feel relief. The silence followed me to my car. It rode home with me. It settled into the walls of my house. Even now, I hear it. Sometimes it comes in the middle of the night when the world is still and my phone sits dark on the nightstand. I'll hear it buzzing faintly, like a call that isn't ringing. I'll press it to my ear, and all I'll hear is that soft, endless static. And sometimes, hidden in the static, I hear her. Someone's in the house. Every time I want to hang up, I want to throw the phone away, cut the line, never answer again. But I don't, because I know it doesn't matter. The silence will always find another way through. I was working the late shift when the call came in. That's how most of the worst nights begin. Quiet, almost boring. I was parked on the shoulder, near mile marker 47, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup, half listening to static on the radio. The highway was empty, just blacktop stretching through the dark, lined with trees that swayed in the wind. Nights like that usually drag on forever. Then my radio crackled. A dispatcher patched through a driver, his voice strained, breathing heavy. "I almost hit her," he blurted out, words tumbling over each other. I straightened in my seat. "Slow down, sir. Hit who?" "There's a woman," he said, gasping, "walking right in the middle of the highway, barefoot. I swerved. Thought I killed her. Jesus, she came out of nowhere." I felt the hairs on my neck rise. That stretch of highway was miles from any house, nothing but forest on both sides. A woman walking there barefoot in the middle of the night? It didn't make sense. "Where are you right now?" I asked, flipping on my lights and pulling out. "Just past marker 52. I pulled over, but..." He broke off. His breathing turned frantic. "She's gone. I swear to God, she was right there. And now she's gone." My tires hummed against the pavement as I sped toward him. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Stay where you are. Keep your hazards on. I'll be there soon." The man muttered something I couldn't catch, his voice tight with panic. I don't know what I saw. I don't know if she was real. That stuck with me. Not just what he said, but how he said it. I've heard fear in a lot of voices over the years, but his wasn't just fear. It was confusion, like reality itself had slipped out from under him. By the time I reached mile marker 52, I spotted a sedan pulled onto the shoulder, hazard lights flashing in the dark. The driver stood outside, pacing, running his hands through his hair. He was maybe mid-40s, balding, dressed in a wrinkled button-down like he'd just come off a long shift. When he saw my cruiser, he waved me down. His face was pale, eyes wide, like he'd just walked out of a nightmare. "Officer," he said, almost breathless, "I swear she was there, right in the road, long hair, white dress, no shoes. I was doing 60. If I hadn't swerved, I'd have hit her." I nodded slowly, scanning the highway. Empty, just blacktop fading into the dark. The only sound was the engine of his car ticking as it cooled. "Which direction was she walking?" I asked. He pointed down the highway. "Toward town. But it's like she vanished." I checked both sides. "There's nowhere she could have gone that fast." I shone my flashlight across the asphalt. Nothing. No footprints. No scraps of fabric. No sign of anyone. Still, something about his shaking hands, the way his eyes kept darting to the road. I knew he believed what he saw. "All right," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Stay in your vehicle. I'll take a look." I started down the shoulder, my boots crunching on gravel. The night air was cold, sharp. The trees loomed on either side, branches swaying in the wind. I listened for footsteps, for breathing, for anything, but the highway was silent. At about 50 yards out, I saw something, a shape, standing at the edge of the trees. My heart thumped once, hard. I lifted the light. For a second, I thought it was just a trick of the dark. But no. It was a woman. She was standing barefoot in the grass, toes pointed toward the highway. Long hair hung down over her face, tangled and dark. A thin white dress clung to her body, the fabric shifting in the breeze. She didn't move. Didn't look at me. Just stood there, head tilted slightly like she was listening. "Ma'am?" My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Ma'am, are you all right? You could have been hit." No response. I felt a ripple of unease crawl down my spine. I took a cautious step closer, keeping my flashlight trained on her. "Do you need help? Are you hurt?" Still nothing. Not even a twitch. I glanced back toward the driver's car. He was watching me with wide, frantic eyes. When I turned back, the woman was gone. I blinked, sweeping the flashlight across the trees. Empty, just branches shifting in the wind, leaves whispering. "Ma'am," my voice felt small in the vast dark. I pushed into the grass, heart thudding, scanning between the trees. No footprints, no rustling, nothing. She was there 1 second and gone the next. I stood frozen, my skin prickling with cold. It didn't make sense. She couldn't have moved that fast. I should have heard her. Finally, I forced myself to step back onto the asphalt. I told myself she slipped deeper into the woods, maybe barefoot and silent, maybe in shock. That was the logical answer, but it didn't feel right. The driver rushed out as I returned to his car. "You saw her, didn't you? Tell me I'm not crazy." I hesitated. His eyes searched mine, desperate for confirmation. "I saw something," I admitted. That was enough. He sagged against the car, relief and terror mixing in his face. We waited there a while, scanning the road, but she didn't come back. Finally, I sent him on his way with a warning to drive carefully, though I could tell he'd be looking in his mirrors the whole ride home. After he left, I sat in my cruiser for a long time, staring down that empty stretch of highway. My headlights cut a tunnel through the dark, but beyond that was just blackness. And in that blackness, I kept imagining her, standing barefoot in the road, head tilted, listening. When dawn broke, I told myself it was exhaustion. A trick of the dark. A shared hallucination between a tired driver and a cop who'd been awake too long. But deep down, I knew better. Because when I finally drove off, I glanced at my rearview mirror, and for a split second, just a blink, I thought I saw her again, standing in the middle of the highway, watching me go. The call came in a few nights later. I was back on the same stretch of highway, same long silence, same swaying trees. But this time it wasn't a frantic commuter. It was a trucker. His voice came through the radio, low and steady. But there was something in it, a crack under the surface. "This is gonna sound strange, officer," he said, "but I think I picked up someone I shouldn't have." My stomach tightened. I already knew where this was going before he even told me. "Describe what happened," I said, gripping the steering wheel tighter than I meant to. He cleared his throat. "I was heading east, just after marker 48. Saw her walking barefoot on the shoulder. White dress, long hair, looked like she needed help. I pulled over, offered her a lift. Every word lined up with what the commuter described. My pulse quickened. "Did she tell you her name?" I asked. There was a pause on the line. "Too long, that's the thing," he muttered. "I can't remember if she did. I remember her getting in, sitting real quiet in the passenger seat, staring out the window. But that's it. I can't remember the rest of the ride. The silence after that felt heavy. You don't remember where you dropped her off." Another pause. His breathing hitched. "I remember her getting in. I remember the smell, like wet earth or old wood. Then it's like I blinked, and the seat was empty." My skin prickled. "Empty? Yeah, I don't remember her leaving. Don't remember her opening the door. She was just gone." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I've dealt with drunks, liars, people seeing things that aren't there. But the way his voice cracked on that last word, it wasn't an act. "Where are you now?" I asked finally. Pulled over at marker 53, I couldn't keep driving. Felt sick, like my head's full of holes. I found him there, parked on the shoulder. His rig loomed over the highway, hazard lights pulsing against the trees. He was leaning against the grill, hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me, he exhaled smoke and shook his head. "You think I'm losing it, don't you?" I stopped a few feet away, studying him. "Tell me what you do remember." He dragged on the cigarette, the ember flaring red in the dark. She climbed in. Didn't say much. Just cold. Not the weather kind. Colder than the cab, like sitting next to a freezer. He rubbed his arms like he could still feel it. I asked where she was going. "I think she said something, but..." He broke off, staring at the pavement. "Every time I try to picture her face, it's blurry. Like smoke. Like my brain won't let me hold on to it." I felt a chill settle in my chest. "But you remember stopping." His eyes snapped up to mine, wide and bloodshot. "No, that's the problem. I never stopped. I never saw her get out. I didn't answer right away. My flashlight beam cut across the side of his rig, the chrome gleaming pale. His passenger door was shut tight. No footprints in the gravel. No sign anyone had stepped down from that cab. You said she smelled like wet earth, I said finally, like old wood. You're sure about that? He nodded, swallowing hard. Yeah, and something else. Sweet but rotten, like flowers left too long in water. That detail sank into me. Heavier than anything else he said. Smell is harder to fake, harder to imagine. I walked around the truck, shining my light across the asphalt into the grass, the trees. Nothing. Just the endless dark. When I came back, the trucker flicked his cigarette into the weeds and rubbed his face. You ever seen something you can't explain, officer? Something that doesn't fit? I didn't answer. Not out loud, but I thought about that night a few days earlier. The woman standing on the roadside, head tilted, listening, and how she disappeared when I looked away. I believe you saw something, I said carefully. He let out a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. That's worse, isn't it? If it was just me losing it, that'd be easier. I didn't argue. We stood there a while, the two of us watching the dark. I could hear his breath, ragged and uneven. Mine wasn't much steadier. Finally, I told him to take a break, grab a motel, get some sleep. He nodded, climbed back into the rig. But before he shut the door, he looked down at me, his face drawn tight. Promise me something, officer. If she shows up again, don't stop. Don't look at her. Just keep driving. The door shut with a heavy thud, and the truck rumbled back to life. I stood there, watching his taillights fade into the night, but I couldn't shake his words, or the way his story overlapped with the other drivers. 2 different men, 2 different nights, same woman, same white dress, same bare feet, same vanishing. When I finally drove off, my radio crackled with static. Not a voice, just static. But underneath it, I thought I heard something, a whisper, faint, drawn out, like someone repeating my words back to me. I killed the radio, heart pounding. The highway stretched ahead, empty, endless, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the only one out there. It was 3 nights later when the call came in. I wasn't even on the road this time. I was sitting in the station, nursing cold coffee and filling out reports I didn't care about. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the tick of the clock and your own breath too loud. Then the dispatcher flagged me, holding up her headset with this pale look on her face. It's him again, she mouthed. My stomach dropped. She patched the call through to my line and I heard his voice, the trucker. The same one from before, but now his voice wasn't just tired. It was breaking. She's here, he whispered. Officer, she's here. She's in the cab. I felt my pulse spike. Slow down. You told me you dropped her off. I did. I swear I did. I remember the door opening. I remember her stepping down. But she's back. She's sitting right next to me. Right now. I could hear the rattle of the road through the phone, the hum of his engine. And underneath it, something else. Breathing, not his. It was too soft, too steady. Describe what you see, I said, my voice lower than I intended. He swallowed hard. I heard it in the receiver. I can't look straight at her. Every time I try, my eyes slide off, like she's not meant to be looked at. But I can see enough. White dress, hair hanging in her face, hands folded in her lap like she's waiting for something. The dispatcher across the desk leaned forward, her knuckles white around her pen. I gestured for her to stay quiet. She hasn't said anything? I asked. No, he said. Just breathing. But I keep thinking I hear her voice under the engine, like a hum, like she's repeating the road noise back to me. The way he said it chilled me more than the words themselves. He sounded like a man being eaten alive from the inside. Where are you? I asked, trying to focus. Highway 16, mile marker 59. That was less than 20 minutes from me. I was already on my feet, grabbing my keys. Keep talking to me, I said, rushing out the door. Tell me what she's doing. The line went quiet for a few seconds. Then in a voice that cracked like a child's, he said, She's smiling now. The words froze me mid-step. Smiling? Yeah, he whispered. I still can't see her face. Not clearly, but I can feel it. She's smiling like she knows something I don't, like she's been waiting for me to notice. The dispatcher gave me a look, her face pale, but I couldn't stop. I drove into the night with the phone on speaker, the call still live. Stay calm, I told him, though my own voice was shaking. I'm on my way, just keep driving. Don't stop. He didn't answer at first. Then I heard a sound I'll never forget, a laugh. But it wasn't his. It was faint, broken, like someone laughing underwater. The trucker's breath hitched. You heard that too? Yes, I whispered. My headlights cut through the black highway. The markers ticked by. 54, 55, 56. Tell me what's happening now, I said. He let out a sob, raw and desperate. She turned her head. She's looking at me now. I can feel her eyes. It's like needles in my skin. Don't look back, I said. Eyes on the road. But I could hear it in his voice. He couldn't resist. The sound of him gasping, choking on air, told me he looked. Oh, God, he breathed. She doesn't have a face. It's just blank, like fog. But it feels like she's smiling through it. I can feel it in my teeth. The line cracked with static. My tires roared as I pushed faster. Stay with me, I said. I'm almost there. And then he screamed, a raw, guttural sound that made my blood run cold. She's touching me, he yelled. Her hand's on my arm. It's freezing. It's... The call cut out. Dead silence. Hello? I shouted into the phone, but all I got was static. I drove like a madman, sirens off, lights flashing against the trees. Mile marker 59 came into view, and I spotted the truck, swerving wildly across the lanes before screeching onto the shoulder. I pulled up behind it, jumped out, and ran. My flashlight beam shook as I climbed the side steps and yanked the door open. The cab was empty. The seatbelt still swung loose. The engine rumbled. His coffee thermos was tipped over on the floor. But the driver was gone. No blood. No sign of a struggle. Just gone. I stood there, breath heaving, staring at the passenger seat. The fabric was wet, not like a spill, soaked, like someone had climbed in straight from a river, and the smell, wet earth, old wood, flowers left too long in water, the same smell he told me about. I backed away, hands shaking, the beam of my flashlight darting across the trees. The night pressed in heavy and suffocating. Behind me, the radio in my cruiser crackled. For a second, I thought it was dispatch, but then I heard it. Breathing. Soft. Steady. And then my own voice repeating back at me. Stay calm. Keep driving. Don't stop! I froze. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out the crickets. The line went dead again, leaving only silence. And in that silence, I realized something that made my chest tighten. If she could climb into his cab, what was stopping her from climbing into mine? Years have passed since that night, but I still drive the same stretch of highway. I don't know why. Maybe I want answers. Maybe I want to convince myself it was all in my head. Or maybe some part of me knows she's still out there, waiting. I'm not on patrol anymore. I left the force a few years back. Too many nights staring. At empty roads, too many calls that ended with nothing but questions. But habits die hard. Sometimes when sleep won't come, I drive out past mile marker 47 and just sit with the scanner on, letting the static wash over me. Most people would call that madness. Maybe they're right, but I swear the road remembers. The first time it happened, it was a summer night. The kind where the air is thick and you can smell the tar on the blacktop. I had the scanner tuned low, half dozing in the driver's seat when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just bleed over from some distant channel. A voice crackling through the static, but then I recognized it. It was the trucker. Not his words exactly, but his panic. That same ragged breathing, the way his voice cracked when he said, She's smiling now. I froze, staring at the scanner like it could explain itself. But the words weren't coming from any dispatcher, not from any open line. It was fragments, echoes, like the road was playing the call back to me, piece by piece. I turned the knob, switched frequencies, but it didn't matter. The voice followed, slipping between channels, breaking apart in static and reforming in whispers. I told myself it was interference, old recordings bleeding into the band. That happens sometimes, right? Except, dispatch swore there were no archives of that call, and radios don't play memories, not unless something else is using them. After that night, it kept happening. Not every time, but often enough to know it wasn't chance. Some nights it would be the commuter, the first man who almost hit her, shouting, "She's gone, she was right there, now she's gone." His words would cut in sharp, then dissolve back into static. Other nights, it was just breathing. Soft, too close, too steady. But the worst nights, it was my own voice. Stay calm, keep driving, don't stop. Exactly the way I said it years ago when the trucker called me in a panic. Except now it came back to me, warped, like something was replaying it from memory. And I knew it wasn't just the road remembering. It was her, the woman in the white dress, the one who vanished when I shone the light, the one who climbed into that trucker's cab and never let him go. It's like she left fingerprints on the airwaves, smudges in the static. And now she lingers there, repeating what she's collected. Like she's practicing the voices of the people she touched, like she's waiting for me to forget, so she can slip into my voice again. I've tried to explain this to people, friends, family. They nod politely, then change the subject. My old coworkers, well, they just call it burnout. They say when you hear enough distress calls, they all blend together in your head. Ghosts of sound, trauma replaying itself. But they weren't there. They didn't stand on that road with the smell of wet earth and flowers rotting in water pressing into their lungs. They didn't see a seatbelt swinging loose with no driver to wear it. I did. And I can't shake the feeling that every time I listen, I'm not the one in control. The static hums, and I lean closer. I catch a breath, a syllable, a broken laugh, and my chest tightens, because I know I should turn it off. I should drive away, but I don't. I listen. I always listen. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I hear a whisper through the scanner that isn't an echo at all. It's not the trucker, not the commuter, not me. It's her. Her voice is soft, almost gentle, but the words cut deep. "Do you remember me? The first time I heard it, I nearly threw the scanner out the window, but I couldn't, because part of me needed to know if she'd say more. She never does. Just that one question, over and over. Do you remember me? And the worst part is, I do. Every time I close my eyes, I see her standing on the roadside, hair hanging in her face, head tilted like she's listening. The trucker never turned up. They listed him missing, assumed he wandered off, maybe staged something. But I know better. He didn't wander. He didn't run. She kept him. Sometimes when I hear the static late at night, I swear I can hear his voice underneath hers. Like he's still driving, still trapped, still trying to call for help. And I wonder if that's what she wants from me too. Maybe the highway isn't just a road anymore. Maybe it's a net, stretched tight, catching voices, memories, people, anyone unlucky enough to stop for her. I told myself I'd stop listening, that I'd move on, let it fade. But I can't, because when the nights are too quiet, when the silence is heavier than sleep, I find myself back in the car, scanner tuned, waiting, and she always finds me. The last time I drove past mile marker 59, the scanner wasn't even on. The car was silent, and still, I heard her. Not through the radio this time. From the passenger seat, a breath, soft, close, and then, in a voice that wasn't quite mine, wasn't quite hers, but something in between. "Keep driving. Don't stop." I didn't dare look. I just kept my hands locked on the wheel, eyes fixed forward, the road stretching endlessly into the dark. And I prayed the memory wasn't strong enough to climb all the way out of the static. I've answered thousands of calls in my career. Fires, accidents, break-ins, overdoses. You learn to listen past the words, hear the fear under the voice, catch the small details that matter. Most nights, it all blurs together. But this call, this one carved itself into me. It was 3 nights later when the call came in. I wasn't even on the road this time. I was sitting in the station, nursing cold coffee and filling out reports I didn't care about. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the tick of the clock and your own breath too loud. Then the dispatcher flagged me, holding up her headset with this pale look on her face. "It's him again," she mouthed. My stomach dropped. She patched the call through to my line, and I heard his voice, the trucker, the same one from before. But now his voice wasn't just tired. "It was breaking. She's here," he whispered. "Officer, she's here. She's in the cab." I felt my pulse spike. "Slow down. You told me you dropped her off." "I did. I swear I did." I remember the door opening. I remember her stepping down. But she's back. She's sitting right next to me. Right now. I could hear the rattle of the road through the phone, the hum of his engine, and underneath it, something else. Breathing. Not his. It was too soft, too steady. "Describe what you see," I said, my voice lower than I intended. He swallowed hard. "I heard it in the receiver. I can't look straight at her. Every time I try, my eyes slide off. Like she's not meant to be looked at, but I can see enough. White dress, hair hanging in her face, hands folded in her lap like she's waiting for something." The dispatcher across the desk leaned forward, her knuckles white around her pen. I gestured for her to stay quiet. "She hasn't said anything?" I asked. "No," he said. "Just breathing." But I keep thinking I hear her voice under the engine, like a hum, like she's repeating the road noise back to me. The way he said it chilled me more than the words themselves. He sounded like a man being eaten alive from the inside. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to focus. "Highway 16, mile marker 59. That was less than 20 minutes from me." I was already on my feet, grabbing my keys. "Keep talking to me," I said, rushing out the door. "Tell me what she's doing." The line went quiet for a few seconds. Then, in a voice that cracked like a child's, he said, "She's smiling now." The words froze me mid-step. "Smiling?" "Yeah," he whispered. I still can't see her face, not clearly, but I can feel it. "She's smiling like she knows something I don't. Like she's been waiting for me to notice." The dispatcher gave me a look, her face pale, but I couldn't stop. I drove into the night with the phone on speaker, the call still live. "Stay calm," I told him, though my own voice was shaking. "I'm on my way. Just keep driving. Don't stop." He didn't answer at first. Then I heard a sound I'll never forget, a laugh. But it wasn't his. It was faint, broken, like someone laughing underwater. The trucker's breath hitched. "You heard that too?" "Yes," I whispered. My headlights cut through the black highway. The markers ticked by. 54, 55, 56. "Tell me what's happening now," I said. He let out a sob, raw and desperate. She turned her head. She's looking at me now. I can feel her eyes. It's like needles in my skin. "Don't look back," I said. "Eyes on the road." But I could hear it in his voice. He couldn't resist. The sound of him gasping, choking on air told me he looked. "Oh God," he breathed. "She doesn't have a face. It's just blank, like fog. But it feels like she's smiling through it. I can feel it in my teeth." The line cracked with static. My tires roared as I pushed faster. "Stay with me," I said. "I'm almost there," and then he screamed. A raw guttural sound that made my blood run cold. "She's touching me," he yelled. "Her hand's on my arm." "It's freezing. It's..." The call cut out, dead silence. "Hello?" I shouted into the phone, but all I got was static. I drove like a madman, sirens off, lights flashing against the trees. Mile marker 59 came into view, and I spotted the truck swerving wildly across the lanes before screeching onto the shoulder. I pulled up behind it, jumped out, and ran. My flashlight beam shook as I climbed the side steps and yanked the door open. The cab was empty. The seatbelt still swung loose. The engine rumbled. His coffee thermos was tipped over on the floor. But the driver was gone. No blood. No sign of a struggle, just gone. I stood there, breath heaving, staring at the passenger seat. The fabric was wet. Not like a spill, soaked like someone had climbed in straight from a river, and the smell. Wet earth, old wood, flowers left too long in water, the same smell he told me about. I backed away, hands shaking, the beam of my flashlight darting across the trees. The night pressed in heavy and suffocating. Behind me, the radio in my cruiser crackled. For a second, I thought it was dispatch, but then I heard it, breathing, soft, steady. And then my own voice, repeating back at me. Stay calm. Keep driving. Don't stop. I froze. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out the crickets. The line went dead again, leaving only silence. And in that silence, I realized something that made my chest tighten. If she could climb into his cab, what was stopping her from climbing into mine? Years have passed since that night, but I still drive the same stretch of highway. I don't know why. Maybe I want answers. Maybe I want to convince myself it was all in my head. Or maybe some part of me knows she's still out there waiting. I'm not on patrol anymore. I left the force a few years back. Too many nights staring at empty roads. Too many calls that ended with nothing but questions. But habits die hard. Sometimes, when sleep won't come, I drive out past mile marker 47 and just sit with the scanner on, letting the static wash over me. Most people would call that madness. Maybe they're right, but I swear the road remembers. The first time it happened, it was a summer night. The kind where the air is thick and you can smell the tar on the blacktop. I had the scanner tuned low, half dozing in the driver's seat when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just bleed over from some distant channel, a voice crackling through the static. But then I recognized it. It was the trucker. Not his words exactly, but his panic. That same ragged breathing, the way his voice cracked when he said, "She's smiling now." I froze, staring at the scanner like it could explain itself. But the words weren't coming from any dispatcher, not from any open line. It was fragments, echoes, like the road was playing the call back to me piece by piece. I turned the knob, switched frequencies, but it didn't matter. The voice followed, slipping between channels, breaking apart in static and reforming in whispers. I told myself it was interference, old recordings bleeding into the band. That happens sometimes, right? Except, dispatch swore there were no archives of that call. And radios don't play memories, not unless something else is using them. After that night, it kept happening. Not every time, but often enough to know it wasn't chance. Some nights, it would be the commuter, the first man who almost hit her, shouting, "She's gone! She was right there! Now she's gone!" His words would cut in sharp, then dissolve back into static. Other nights, it was just breathing. Soft. Too close. Too steady. But the worst nights, it was my own voice. Stay calm. Keep driving. Don't stop. Exactly the way I said it years ago when the trucker called me in a panic. Except now it came back to me, warped, like something was replaying it from memory. And I knew it wasn't just the road remembering. It was her, the woman in the white dress. The one who vanished when I shone the light. The one who climbed into that trucker's cab and never let him go. It's like she left fingerprints on the airwaves, smudges in the static. And now she lingers there, repeating what she's collected. Like she's practicing the voices of the people she touched. Like she's waiting for me to forget so she can slip into my voice again. I've tried to explain this to people. Friends, family, they nod politely, then change the subject. My old co-workers, well, they just call it burnout. They say when you hear enough distress calls, they all blend together in your head. Ghosts of sound. Trauma replaying itself. But they weren't there. They didn't stand on that road with the smell of wet earth and flowers rotting in water pressing into their lungs. They didn't see a seatbelt swinging loose with no driver to wear it. I did. And I can't shake the feeling that every time I listen, I'm not the one in control. The static hums, and I lean closer. I catch a breath, a syllable, a broken laugh, and my chest tightens because I know I should turn it off. I should drive away, but I don't. I listen. I always listen. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear a whisper through the scanner that isn't an echo at all. It's not the trucker, not the commuter. Not me, it's her. Her voice is soft, almost gentle, but the words cut deep. Do you remember me? The first time I heard it, I nearly threw the scanner out the window, but I couldn't. Because part of me needed to know if she'd say more. She never does. Just that one question. Over and over. Do you remember me? And the worst part is, I do. Every time I close my eyes, I see her standing on the roadside, hair hanging in her face, head tilted like she's listening. The trucker never turned up. They listed him missing, assumed he wandered off, maybe staged something. But I know better. He didn't wander. He didn't run, she kept him. Sometimes when I hear the static late at night, I swear I can hear his voice underneath hers. Like he's still driving, still trapped, still trying to call for help. And I wonder if that's what she wants from me too. Maybe the highway isn't just a road anymore. Maybe it's a net, stretched tight, catching voices, memories, people. Anyone unlucky enough to stop for her. I told myself I'd stop listening, that I'd move on, let it fade. But I can't. Because when the nights are too quiet, when the silence is heavier than sleep, I find myself back in the car, scanner tuned, waiting. And she always finds me. The last time I drove past mile marker 59, the scanner wasn't even on. The car was silent. And still I heard her, not through the radio this time, from the passenger seat, a breath, soft, close, and then, in a voice that wasn't quite mine, wasn't quite hers, but something in between. Keep driving. Don't stop. I didn't dare look. I just kept my hands locked on the wheel, eyes fixed forward, the road stretching endlessly into the dark, and I prayed the memory wasn't strong enough to climb all the way out of the static. I've answered thousands of calls in my career. Fires, accidents, break-ins, overdoses. You learn to listen past the words, hear the fear under the voice, catch the small details that matter. Most nights it all blurs together, but this call, this one carved itself into me. It was late. I remember because the room was quiet, and the hum of the fluorescent lights was louder than usual. My coffee had gone cold on the desk. I was drifting in that half-alert state you fall into when the city sleeps. Then the line lit up. At first, I thought no one was there. Just silence. I said the usual words, 911, what's your emergency? But I only heard breathing, not panicked, not gasping. Just shallow. Careful. Like someone was afraid the sound of their own lungs would give them away. Then came the whisper. She said, "He's in the house." I sat up straight, every nerve snapping awake. Her voice was faint, like she had the phone pressed tight against her lips. Terrified to let it carry, I asked her name. Nothing. Just a pause, then the faint creak of wood, like someone shifting their weight on an old floorboard, then the whisper again. "I'm in the basement. He doesn't know I'm here." Her words chilled me, not just because of what she said, but how she said it. Slow, careful, like each syllable was dangerous. I asked where she lived, trying to keep my voice steady. She gave me the street, then stopped, like she was afraid to say more. I tapped the address through to dispatch, signaling officers. But I kept my voice calm, low, like I was there with her, crouched in the dark. She whispered that she heard him moving upstairs, that every step sounded closer. I've taken hundreds of burglary calls, but this was different. Usually people whisper fast, panicked, begging for help. She was measured, controlled, like she was rehearsing each word before letting it escape. I told her to stay hidden, keep the line open. She whispered, "Okay?" Then silence, long silence. I thought maybe the line had dropped, but then I heard something faint. Not her this time. Something heavier. A slow drag of footsteps across the floor above her. The kind of sound that makes you picture weight pressing down with each step. Her breathing quickened, but she didn't speak. I whispered back, asked if she could see a door. "A window, any way out." She said, "There's a door, but it's locked from the outside." Locked from the outside. That made my stomach twist. I asked if she knew the person upstairs. She didn't answer at first, just the faintest whimper, cut off as though she'd covered her own mouth. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "He's been here before." That stopped me. Something about the way she said it, flat, certain, made it sound less like a guess and more like a memory. I wanted to ask more. But the floorboards above creaked again, louder this time. She whispered he's at the stairs. I could picture it. The door at the top of the basement steps slowly opening, shadows spilling down the walls. Her breathing grew sharp, ragged, but she stayed quiet. I whispered that officers were on their way, that she just had to stay still. But then I heard something through the line that didn't belong. A second voice, low, male, barely audible. Not words I could understand, just a murmur as though someone was speaking to themselves. She whimpered, and I nearly shouted into the receiver, but I bit it back. I told her to keep hidden, begged her not to move. The male voice stopped. Then silence again. Seconds passed like hours. I strained to hear anything. Her breath, his steps, but there was nothing. Just the hum of static on the line. Finally, she whispered, "I think he knows I'm here." My chest clenched. I told her to stay quiet, to wait for the officers. They were close. But then came the sound I'll never forget. The basement door creaking open. The wooden groan carried through the phone, sharp and long. I could hear her muffled sobs, her breath catching in her throat. I whispered her name, but she didn't answer. Then through the line, I heard his footsteps descending. One at a time, slow, deliberate, and her whisper shaking now as though the words were breaking apart in her mouth. "He's coming down." I pressed the headset so tight it hurt. My pulse was in my ears. I told her help was almost there, just hold on. She didn't reply, just silence. And then, faintly, too faintly, I heard the phone shift like it was sliding against fabric. Her breath cut off. A scuffle, and then nothing. Dead air. The call stayed open, but there was no sound. No struggle, no scream. Just silence so heavy I thought it would crush me. When the officers arrived, they found the house. Found the basement, but it was empty. No woman. No intruder. The phone was there, though. Lying on the basement floor, still connected, and when they lifted it to their ears, all they heard was a faint whisper. Not hers. Not his. Something else. Something repeating back the same words she'd spoken when she first called. He's in the house. I thought the night had ended with that call. The one with the whisper, the locked basement, the voice that didn't belong. I didn't sleep when my shift ended. I drove home in silence, headlights cutting through empty streets, my mind replaying her voice over and over. He's in the house. But the next night I was back at my desk. Same chair, same hum of the lights, same dead coffee cooling in its cup. And then the line lit up. I answered without thinking. My heart sank when I saw the number. It was the same. The same one from last night. I froze for a moment. Part of me didn't want to pick it up. But habit won, and I pressed the line open. This time, there was no whisper, no breathless fear. Just a man's voice, calm, smooth. As if we were talking over a cup of coffee, not through an emergency line. He said, "You want to know about the woman in the basement, don't you?" The hairs on the back of my neck lifted. I asked him who he was, how he got this number. He chuckled low and steady. Not mocking, just patient, like he already knew how I'd react. He said, "She told you she was hiding, didn't she? Whispered it to you. Said I was in the house." My throat went dry. I hadn't told anyone about the details yet. The report wasn't filed. The officers hadn't even asked me much. But he knew. I demanded to know his name, but he ignored the question. Instead, he started describing her. She had her knees tucked to her chest, didn't she? The phone pressed tight against her lips, her eyes wide in the dark. He paused. She was trying so hard not to breathe too loud. You could hear her lungs shaking through the line. I gripped the desk. The sound of his voice wasn't frantic, wasn't angry. It was reverent, like he was remembering something precious. I told him officers had already searched the house, that it was empty. He laughed again. Not loud, just soft, like he didn't believe me. "Empty?" he said. "No, houses remember. They don't empty that easily. I didn't know what to say to that." My mouth felt dry. He kept going, describing things I hadn't said out loud. The phone on the floor. The open line. "You heard me too, didn't you?" Just for a second. My voice, whispering. I wanted to hang up, but my hand wouldn't move. Something about the way he spoke. It rooted me there. Finally, I asked what he wanted. He said, "I wanted you to listen." Then silence. For a moment, I thought he'd hung up. But then the static shifted, and I heard him again. Softer now, she's still there. She never left that basement. You just didn't look hard enough. I whispered that she was gone, that the house was abandoned, but my voice didn't sound convincing, not even to me. Because part of me knew. He wasn't guessing. He was telling me what he saw. Then he said something that made my stomach turn cold. You know what she whispered before the line went quiet? I said nothing. He whispered almost tender. She said your name. I jerked upright, my headset pressing hard against my ear. He repeated it, soft and sure, as if savoring the way it sounded. My name. She had never asked who I was. She had never known me. Yet he claimed her last words were for me. I snapped at him, told him I was tracing the call, that officers were already on their way. He chuckled again. Trace it, he said. See where it leads, and then the line went dead. I stared at the number on the screen, my hand frozen over the keys. Dispatch tried to trace it, of course, but there was nothing. No record of the call, no origin, no digital footprint, just like the night before. And I sat there, headset heavy, wondering which was worse, that he was lying to me, or that he wasn't, because I could still hear her whisper in my head, not from memory. Fresh, alive. Like she was right there on the other end of the line. Repeating it again and again, he's in the house. They sent officers out the next morning, not the night of the call, the next morning. That alone bothered me. I wanted someone to go sooner, but by the time I finished explaining, by the time the report was written, they'd decided it could wait until daylight. I told them it couldn't. I told them something was wrong, that I had spoken with a man describing the woman in detail, that he had known things no one else could know. But procedure doesn't care about feelings, so I sat in my chair, headset heavy on my ears, and I waited. The address was one of those forgotten houses at the edge of town, not falling apart, not condemned, just neglected. A place with no story except the one it had grown into through silence. When the officers arrived, they found the doors locked from the inside. All of them. Front, back, even the basement hatch, locked tight. The windows were shut too, dust layering the sills. They had to force their way in, and when they walked through the rooms, their radios clicking in my ear, they found nothing. No woman, no intruder. Not even signs that someone had been there. The place was bare, old furniture under sheets, cobwebs in the corners, the kind of stillness that makes you wonder if the air has been trapped for decades. And yet, when one of the officers pushed open the basement door, his voice caught. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. More like a pause, the kind you make when your eyes can't decide if what they're seeing is real. He said, "There's a phone down here." I pressed my headset closer, straining to hear. A phone, not a modern one, not a cell. An old rotary phone sitting in the middle of the concrete floor. No dust on it, no cord running to a wall. Just the phone, black and silent, like it had been placed there deliberately. The officer tapped the receiver. The sound echoed up through the radio, hollow and sharp. I told him to check the line, but he said there wasn't one. No wires, no connection, just the phone, sitting where no phone should be. That was the end of the search. No one hiding. No intruder. Just a locked house and a phone that shouldn't exist. They wrote it up as nothing. A prank call, most likely. But I knew better. Because that night, when I sat back down at my desk, headset ready, the line lit up again. Same number, the one with no record. And I answered it. At first, there was silence. Not static, silence. As if the world on the other end didn't exist. Then, faintly, I heard it. Breathing. Not a woman's this time. Not the panicked, shallow gasps of someone hiding in the dark. This was slow, steady, male. I spoke, asking who it was. My voice cracked halfway through. The breathing stopped. Then the man spoke. "Did you like the house?" he asked. I froze. He said it again, more patient this time. "Did you like the house?" I whispered, asked how he knew we'd been there. He laughed softly, the way someone does when you've missed an obvious answer. Because I was waiting for you, he said. I've always been waiting, something about the way he spoke. It wasn't meant for me alone. It was like he was speaking to anyone who would listen, anyone foolish enough to pick up the line. I told him to stop calling. I told him this line was for emergencies only. His voice dropped low, almost affectionate. Oh, but this is an emergency, he said. She's still down there. She never left the basement. You should know that by now. My hand trembled on the console. I wanted to hang up. God, I wanted to. But my fingers wouldn't move, because part of me believed him, and then he said something worse. You can come see for yourself. The line clicked dead before I could respond. No trace again. No record. Just my reflection in the dark window by the desk. Headset strapped on like a noose, I told my supervisor. I told anyone who would listen. But the calls never showed up in the system. To them, it was nothing more than a stressed dispatcher mixing up his shifts, hearing echoes where there were none. But I knew, because every night since then, when the room goes quiet, when the clock ticks past midnight, the same number flashes on the screen, and every night, against all reason, I answer it. Sometimes it's the man, sometimes it's just breathing, and sometimes it's her. The whisper, soft as dust. He's still in the house, and I wonder, if I stopped answering, if I let it ring, would the calls stop? Or would the ringing never end? I thought I had heard every kind of panic a human voice could carry. Gunshots in the background, crashes on the highway, screams through smoke and fire. But nothing. Nothing sounded like that call. It came in just past 2 in the morning. The line blinked red, and I answered with my usual tone, trying to sound steady even when my stomach knotted from the silence of the shift. The first thing I heard wasn't words. It was a scream. Not sharp, not angry, just raw. A sound that didn't come from the throat alone. It came from the chest, from the heart. I pulled the headset tight and tried to calm them down. Asking where they were, what was happening, a voice finally broke through. A man's voice, jagged and cracking. He kept saying the same thing. The walls are moving. At first, I thought it was metaphor. People say things like that when they're drunk, when they're high, when their minds slip out of reach. But he said it again and again. Louder each time. The walls are moving. I can't breathe. They're closing in on me. I asked where he was, and he gasped it out between sobs. A motel, off Route 6. He didn't know the name. Just said, Room 6? I typed the information quickly, sent it through to dispatch. Officers were already rolling, but it would take time. That stretch of highway was almost empty at night. I told him to stay on the line with me, to breathe, to describe what was happening, and what he said still makes me shiver. He described the wallpaper first. Said it was peeling at the edges, yellow with damp. He said he could see little shapes moving under it, like insects pressing against the thin paper, trying to crawl out. I told him it was just a trick of the light, that panic can play games with your eyes. He said no, it wasn't his eyes. He could hear it, scratching, from inside the walls. Then he swore he saw the paper bulging, stretching, like something was pressing its face against it from the other side. I kept my voice calm, telling him to leave the room, to step outside into the fresh air. He cried out that he couldn't, that every time he tried the door, it felt smaller, like the knob was further away, shrinking into the wall. He said the room was getting tighter, squeezing him in. The way he described it, it didn't sound like panic. It didn't sound like hallucination. It sounded like he was being buried alive. I told him to find the window, to break it if he had to. I'll never forget his response. There is no window. I froze. Motels always have windows, but his voice was firm, desperate, not confused. He said the room didn't have one, that there was only the bed, the dresser, the door, and those walls, those moving walls. He said the ceiling was lower now, pressing down toward his head. He said the wallpaper was splitting, tearing, and he could see things writhing underneath, long, pale arms, thin like roots, twisting in the seams. I kept telling him to stay calm, that help was on the way. My voice shook so badly I'm not sure he believed me. He started sobbing again, begging me not to hang up. He kept repeating my name over and over, as if I was the only thing anchoring him in that room. And then he screamed. It was different this time. Not fear. Pain. I heard him thrashing, the phone clattering against the booth, and his voice breaking into raw, jagged cries. "They've got me! They've got me! They're pulling me in!" The line distorted. Not like static. More like water rushing over the sound, muffling it, drowning it. And then, silence, just the empty hiss of the line. I called his name again and again, but there was nothing. When the officers finally arrived, they found the motel easy enough. A crumbling old place just off the highway, half the rooms shuttered with plywood. The payphone was there too, right outside the office. But room 6, the manager swore it had been closed for years. Door locked. Window boarded, empty. They opened it anyway, searching every inch, and inside it was just a bare room. No bed. No dresser. No wallpaper. Just 4 concrete walls, smooth and blank. Not a mark on them. No sign anyone had ever been inside. The phone booth record showed the call had come from that payphone, clear as day. But no one saw a man there. No one heard him. And yet I can still hear him. Every night when the shift gets quiet, when my eyes start to burn from staring at the console, I hear his voice again. The walls are moving. The walls are moving, and I swear sometimes when I'm sitting alone, I feel the room breathing with me. I thought it would end with that first night. I told myself the call was just another strange case. Another nightmare I'd file away with the rest of them. But it didn't end. If anything, that was just the beginning. 2 days later, the officers went back out to the motel. Not because of me, because of the manager. He swore something was wrong with room 6. Said he kept hearing noises in there at night, even though the place was locked up tight, so they pried the door open again. This time, the room wasn't bare. I wasn't there, but I saw the photos. I wish I hadn't. The walls. They weren't smooth anymore. They were gouged, shredded in long, frantic streaks. Claw marks. That's what they looked like. Like someone had torn at the concrete with their nails until the skin split from the bone. There was no furniture. No window. But the door had been bolted shut from the inside. They told me it didn't make sense. No one could have gotten in or out, and yet the marks were real. When I saw the pictures, my chest went cold, because I remembered his voice. The man on the line screaming that the walls were closing in, like he'd been trapped there, scratching, fighting, and nobody could reach him. The officers didn't linger. They cleared the place, sealed it back up, told the manager to keep it locked. But the motel wasn't the only thing that stayed awake. That night, while I was on shift, the payphone lit up again. Same number, same dead stretch of highway. The console blinked red, and before I even touched it, I knew what I'd hear. When I answered, it wasn't a voice. Not at first. It was the sound of the line already open, like someone breathing on the other end. A slow, shaky inhale, a pause. Then the faintest scrape, like nails dragging across the receiver. I whispered into the headset, asking who was there. No answer, just that breathing, uneven and wet like lungs filling with water. I muted the line, flagged it to dispatch, sent another unit out to check the motel, but the call didn't hang up. It stayed open, the breathing growing harsher until it broke into soft murmurs. At first I thought it was static, but as I listened harder, I realized it was words. The same words. Over and over. Still here. Still here. Still here. I wanted to tear the headset off, but I couldn't move. My whole body had gone numb, rooted to the chair. By the time officers arrived at the motel, the payphone was gone. Not just broken. Ripped out of the ground. The wires dangled like veins pulled from a throat. No prints, no tools. Just a scar of bare earth where it had stood. And yet the line stayed open. It never clicked shut. Even with the phone gone, the call kept bleeding through my headset. That shallow breathing, that voice whispering in a rhythm I couldn't escape. Still here, still here, still here. I begged the tech team to trace it, to cut it, to kill the connection. They tried everything, but the console refused to release it. The line existed even when it shouldn't. It was like the call wasn't coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from the room. I couldn't stop imagining it. The bare concrete, the claw marks on the walls, the bolt locked from the inside, a place that shouldn't exist, a place that doesn't let you leave once you enter. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. That man wasn't just panicking. He was telling the truth. The walls really did move. They shifted around him, swallowing him whole. And now he was still there, not alive, not dead, just caught in the in-between, breathing into my ear through a line that should have been cut days ago. Every night since, the line flickers to life. Always the same time, always the same sound, the breathing, the scraping, and the whisper, still here. The worst part isn't hearing it, it's feeling it. When the line is open, the room around me doesn't feel the same. The air gets heavy, like it's pressing in against my chest. My vision narrows at the corners. Sometimes I think I see the wallpaper around my desk shift, bulging outward, as though something beneath the surface is pressing to get through. I know I'm not supposed to think like this. I know how it sounds, but every time I close my eyes, I see that room. No windows, no doors, just walls closing in. And I wonder if that's where I'm headed. If someday I'll pick up the line, and instead of a voice, I'll hear my own, still here, whispering from the other side. It was late in my shift when his voice first came through. I remember because the floor was quiet. Calls had slowed, and I was staring at the clock, waiting for the hands to crawl past midnight. I thought it would be another uneventful night. Then the console lit up. I picked up, expecting the usual, maybe a car crash, maybe another drunken fight, but all I heard was breathing, shaky, uneven, like the person on the other end couldn't decide whether to whisper or scream. Finally, a man spoke. "I'm lost." His voice cracked when he said it. Not loud, not panicked, but tight, like the words were squeezing his throat. I asked where he was calling from, but he just kept repeating it. "I'm lost. I'm in the woods. I don't know where I am." Now, people get turned around on hikes all the time. Usually they've got a rough idea of the trail, a landmark, a map, something. But when I asked him for a trail name, a mile marker, anything at all, he went quiet. I could hear him shifting the phone against his ear, leaves crunching under his boots. Then he said something that froze me. "The trees look wrong." I thought I misheard him. I asked him to repeat it, and he did. "The trees, they look wrong." There was a long pause after that. Just the wind pushing through the receiver, soft but restless, like it was moving in circles. When I pressed him, he tried to explain. He said the forest didn't look like it had earlier. Said the trees weren't standing the same way. Their shapes were different now. He kept saying it over and over, his voice slipping lower each time. "They're not where they were. They're not the same. They keep moving." I wanted to chalk it up to panic, disorientation, but there was something in his tone, like he wasn't describing fear. He was describing certainty. He swore he had been on the main trail, said he'd only stepped off to relieve himself, and when he turned back, the path was gone. I asked him if he had a flashlight. He did. I told him to shine it around, describe what he saw. I could hear the click of the switch, the shuffle of his boots, and then silence for a moment. I thought we'd lost connection. But then his breath hitched, sharp and close. "It's wrong," he whispered. "Everything looks wrong." He said the light didn't fall the way it should. Said the shadows bent in directions that didn't make sense. He told me one tree had too many branches, all curled down like arms. Another had no leaves at all, but the trunk was swollen, breathing like it was alive. I tried to steady my own voice, but I felt my throat go dry. I asked him to stay calm, to keep walking slowly, and to describe landmarks if he saw them. He said he'd try. For a while, all I heard was him moving, his footsteps crunching on the forest floor, the swish of undergrowth brushing against his jeans. Then he whispered, almost too soft to catch, "They're closer now." I asked who. The line crackled before he answered. "The trees." My chest tightened. I wanted to tell him it wasn't possible. But I couldn't find the words. Instead, I asked if he could see any light in the distance. A road, a cabin, anything. He didn't answer at first. Just breathed harder, faster. Then he said, "They don't want me to leave." His voice was breaking by then. I could hear the tears under his words, the way his lungs trembled, trying to push them out. "I don't think they're trees," he said. Those words, they sank into me. I pressed him, begged him to keep talking, to describe what he meant. But his breathing grew sharp, ragged, like he was running now. Branches snapped loud over the line. His shoes pounded against the dirt. He kept muttering between gasps. "They're following. They're following. They're not trees. They're not trees?" And then he screamed, not from pain, from recognition, like he'd seen something his mind couldn't handle. The phone dropped. I heard it hit the ground, muffled but still connected. After that, only the sound of his footsteps retreating. Crashing deeper into the woods, I shouted into the line, trying to get his attention, trying to call him back. But he didn't answer. What I did hear, what I swear I heard, was something else. Not him, something. Heavier, slower, like wood dragging against wood, like roots tearing out of the earth. The sound was faint, but it was there. Moving in time with him, then the call cut. No click, no goodbye, just silence. The line went dead. We traced it as best we could. The signal bounced off towers in a radius of about 20 miles, all forest. Search and rescue teams combed the area for 3 days. They found his car at a trailhead, sure enough. They found boot prints leading into the trees, but they never found him. Not a jacket, not a phone, not a body, just gone. I wanted to put it behind me, write it off as another lost hiker, another tragedy swallowed by the woods. But I can't, because every time I think about it, I remember what he said. Not the panic, not the screaming, the certainty. I don't think they're trees, and in the quiet moments when the wind rushes past my window at night, I almost believe him, because sometimes, if you listen close, the trees do sound like they're moving, and maybe they are. I should have been able to forget that call. Lost hikers are common enough. Tragic, yes, but they happen every year. People wander too far, lose the trail, make mistakes. The woods swallow them up. And if they're lucky, search and rescue pulls them out before it's too late. But this one stuck. It wasn't just the man's fear. It was the way he described the forest, the way he said the trees weren't where they were supposed to be. I kept hearing his words replay in my head, long after the line went dead. I don't think they're trees. For weeks, I couldn't shake it. And then, almost a month later, the console lit up again. It was the same number. My chest locked when I saw it. I answered fast. Maybe too fast, trying to keep my voice steady. At first, all I heard was static. Not the usual kind either. It had a low, pulsing quality, almost like a slow heartbeat buried under the noise. Then I heard his voice. I'm still lost. It was the same man. Same tone. Same rasp of fear just beneath the surface. But here's the part that froze me. There hadn't been a single call from his phone since the night he disappeared. The system flagged it as inactive. The battery should have been dead weeks ago. I asked where he was. If he'd found a road, a trail, anything. He said no. He said he'd been walking the whole time. But the forest just looped back on itself. I asked if he had GPS, and he said yes. He told me it still had some charge. For a second, I felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could pin down his location this time. I asked him to read me the coordinates. There was a pause. Then the sound of him fumbling with the device. Beeps, buttons. Finally, he read them out. I typed them into the system. It came back with a location, except it was the exact same coordinates as the first search. The same trailhead, the same patch of forest we'd combed for 3 days with dogs and drones. I told him to try again, to refresh the signal. He did. Same numbers. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. The arrow keeps spinning. It points one way, then turns back. Every time I follow it, I end up where I started. I asked what he meant. He said the GPS wasn't broken, it was working. But the forest itself was wrong. It kept folding him back. I've walked for hours, but the trees never change, he whispered. It's like the ground is moving under me. My hands hovered uselessly above the keyboard. I didn't know what to tell him. And then, beneath his voice, I heard something else. At first I thought it was the static again. But no, it had shape to it. It was faint, like a whisper pressed against the far end of the line, and it was repeating him, word for word, only backwards. When he said, "I've walked for hours," I heard the faintest echo twisted around. Shruo rof claw evai. The syllables dragged and warped, like they were being pulled through water. I froze, listening harder. It wasn't an audio glitch. It was too precise. It was deliberate. I didn't tell him I could hear it, not right away. I wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining things. So I asked him to keep describing what he saw. "The shadows bend when I turn," he said. "I think the trees are watching me." And again, under his words, that faint reflection. Em gniktau era sayert et knaitai. Every word. Mirrored. I gripped the headset tighter, feeling my palms slick with sweat. I asked if he could hear it too. He went silent. Then, so soft I almost missed it, he said, "Yes." I asked him what it sounded like. He said, "It sounds like me." He told me the voice had been following him for days. Said sometimes it was ahead of him in the trees, sometimes behind, always repeating what he said but wrong, twisted. He said once when he stopped speaking, it whispered something first, not backwards, not an echo, something he couldn't understand. That was when I realized my hands were trembling. My headset cord quivered with every shiver that ran through me. I tried to keep him calm, to keep myself calm. I told him to stay put, to stop moving, and that I'd get someone out there. But before I could finish, the line shifted. The static swelled, filling my ears until I thought they'd burst. And then I heard it, loud and clear, the backwards voice. But this time it wasn't repeating him, it was repeating me. Every word I spoke into the headset came back, twisted, dragged, reversed. When I said, "Stay calm," I heard it hiss back, "Mlak yats." When I said, "We'll find you," it whispered, "Oi denif lu." It wasn't faint anymore. It was right there, loud as the man's breathing. I ripped the headset away. For a second, but I could still hear it faintly, bleeding through the console speaker. I shoved it back on and told him to keep talking, to stay with me. He said he didn't want to anymore. He said every time he spoke, the forest seemed to close in tighter. He swore the trees leaned closer, like they were listening. And then his voice cracked. "I don't think I'm supposed to be here," he whispered. The backwards voice echoed it instantly. "Ere ebot de sopus my nightanod I." And I swear, it laughed after. Just a little. A warped, broken laugh, like glass grinding against itself. I tried to tell him to move, to run, to do anything, but the GPS was useless. The signal was useless. The only thing tethering him to me was that cursed line. And then, just as sudden as it came, the echo stopped. Silence pressed in. The man breathed, sharp and shallow. Then he asked me something, a question I can't forget. What if I'm not lost? I asked what he meant. He said, "What if I walked out already? What if I never left? What if I've been gone this whole time?" Before I could answer, the call dropped. Dead line, no static, no echo, just gone. We traced the signal again, same coordinates, same patch of forest. When the team went out, they found nothing, no footprints, no phone, just the same endless trees. But later that night, after my shift ended, I sat in my car, too shaken to drive. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself, and in the stillness of that moment, I swear I heard it again. The backwards voice whispering from the dark, repeating me. Only this time, I hadn't said a word. I didn't want to answer the line when it lit up again. It had been 3 nights since the last call, the one where his words were twisted back at me, reversed, broken into pieces. I thought maybe it was over. I prayed it was over. But when I saw the number flash across the console, I knew it wasn't. It was him. My throat went dry, but I answered. This time there wasn't panic in his voice, not like before. He sounded tired, weak, like the forest had been bleeding the strength out of him. "I can't walk anymore," he said. "It doesn't matter which way I go. I end up in the same place." I asked him to stay calm, to tell me what he could see. He said there was a clearing, flat ground, dead leaves piled up in the center, like a nest. He told me the trees around it weren't standing still, that when he turned his head, they were in different places than before. He said the forest was rearranging itself. And then, as if to prove it, I heard the GPS beep. He said he'd checked it again, coordinates. I told him to read them out. This time they weren't the same. They were new. A patch of land 5 miles deeper than any of the earlier searches. I flagged it instantly, punching the numbers into the system. Relief hit me so hard it made me dizzy. Finally, something different. Finally, a lead we could move on. I dispatched a search team. They mobilized fast, headlights cutting through the dark, radios crackling with clipped, urgent voices. All the while, I kept him talking. His breathing was ragged. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "I hear it again," he muttered. I didn't have to ask what he meant. The echo, the backwards voice. I strained my ears, praying I wouldn't hear it. But sure enough, it was there, faint beneath his words, repeating him. Only this time, it wasn't a beat behind. It spoke with him, at the same time. His words doubled, one forward, one reversed. It was like 2 versions of him were speaking in unison. The hairs on my arms rose. I wanted to tell him, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to make him panic. Instead, I asked him to stay in the clearing, to keep his phone on, to keep talking until the team arrived. Minutes passed. Then I heard them, faint bursts of radio chatter through my headset. The team was close, but the hiker didn't sound relieved. He went silent. When I called his name, he whispered back, "They're not coming from the trees." I asked him what he meant. "They're coming from me." I didn't understand at first. Then I heard it. His voice doubled again, but louder now. It didn't just echo, it fractured. One version forward, one backward, and then a third, a harsh, broken tone that didn't belong to either, something speaking through him. The line hissed, filling with static until I could barely hear his breathing. The radios on my other screen lit up. The team had reached the coordinates, but their voices were sharp with confusion. There was no clearing, no nest of leaves, just trees, endless, unbroken trees. And in the middle of them, lying face down in the dirt, was his phone. Still on, still connected to me. I froze when I heard them confirm it, because his voice was still in my ear. He was still talking, and the call hadn't dropped. They sent me photos of the phone. The screen was cracked, dirt smeared across it, but the line was open. Elapsed call time, 6 hours, 43 minutes. My stomach churned, because I knew what that meant. He wasn't talking from the forest anymore. He was talking from the phone itself. I pressed the headset closer, my pulse hammering in my throat. "Do you see them?" he whispered. I asked who. "The others," he said. "They're waiting." The static roared, drowning the words, but I caught pieces. "Not lost. Already here. Still here." The voices layered, growing heavier, like more were pushing through the line. Not just him anymore, dozens, maybe more. I ripped the headset off and slammed it against the desk, but the voices still bled faintly from the console speaker. The search team said there was nothing else at the site, just the phone, no footprints, no body, no sign of him ever being there. They bagged the device and brought it back, but even sealed in evidence, the line stayed open. I could hear it crackling from across the room. The others avoided it, shoving it deeper into storage, as if distance could erase the sound. But I hear it still. Sometimes it's quiet, just static. Other nights I hear him, the hiker. his voice breaking into layers forward and backward, speaking in rhythms that don't belong to this world. And when it's worst, when it's strongest, I hear my own words slip back at me, twisted, reversed, repeating from the dark, like the forest isn't out there at all. It's here, on the line, waiting. It had been months since the line went dead. The case was closed, at least on paper. The man, his name was Daniel Harper, was officially declared deceased. His family held a memorial without a body. They wanted answers, but all I could give them was silence. The phone he left behind was locked away in evidence. It never powered off. Not really. Even when the screen went black, the call timer kept running, but no one checked it anymore. Everyone wanted to forget. Everyone but me. I still thought about his voice at night. The way it fractured, the way it layered. The way sometimes it carried my words back to me in reverse. I tried to bury it, but then the number came back. It was a slow night, months later. The console lights were dim, the radio chatter low. I was drinking cold coffee, staring at the clock, when the call flashed across the board. The same number, the same hiker. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hand hovered over the receiver. My body knew I shouldn't answer, but I did, and I heard him. Hello? Hello? Please? Can anyone hear me? His voice, clear as the first night he called. I sat frozen, my throat locked. He sounded alive, desperate, exhausted. I whispered his name before I realized it, and he froze, like he recognized me. You remember, he said, his breath shaking. Please, I need help. I'm still out here. I'm still at the same place. The same coordinates. Please send someone. Please. The words sliced through me, because I remembered the coordinates. The same ones where the team found only his phone. The same ones where there was no clearing, no nest of leaves, nothing. I told him, as gently as I could, that he'd been declared dead, that months had passed, that it wasn't possible. Silence filled the line. Then his voice broke into a sob. No. I've been here the whole time. I don't know how long. The trees, they don't move like they should. They don't let me leave. Please, I can't keep walking in circles. You have to believe me. I did believe him. That was the worst part. Every instinct told me it was real, that he was still in that forest, trapped in some loop that time itself couldn't touch. I pulled up the old report, my hands trembling. I punched the coordinates back into the system. They matched perfectly. The radios came alive as I dispatched a new team. Fresh boots, new blood, people who didn't know the history. I didn't tell them everything. I couldn't. They wouldn't have gone if they knew. Meanwhile, I kept him talking. His voice cracked with exhaustion. He said he hadn't slept in days, that the trees whispered when he closed his eyes, that when he tried to drink from the stream, the water was dry the moment it touched his lips. But what chilled me most, he said he hadn't aged, not a day. That when he looked at his hands, they were the same as when he left, like time had stopped. The search team's headlights cut through the forest as they pushed toward the coordinates. I kept one ear on the radio, one on him. The radios reported the same thing as before. No clearing, just endless woods, and yet in my ear, he swore he saw them. I can see the lights, he whispered. I can see them through the trees. They're so close. Tell them to come. Please. I'm right here. The radio stayed firm. Nothing. No sign of him. One of the searchers said the air felt heavy, like the woods themselves didn't want them there. And then the radios crackled with interference, the exact same hiss I'd heard months ago. I pressed the headset closer, panic rising, because the line wasn't just carrying his voice anymore. It was carrying mine, faint, delayed, spoken backward, like the forest was replaying me from the inside. The team called out over the radio, but the words broke apart in static. I heard Daniel whisper, They're walking past me, right past me. Why can't they see me? I screamed into the mic, begging them to look again, to check the clearing, to call his name. They swore there was no clearing, no Daniel, nothing but trees. But in my ear, his sobs grew louder. They're leaving. Don't let them leave me. Please don't let them leave. And then, silence. The radios cleared. The static drained. The search team reported back, their voices steady, almost annoyed. Nothing found. Area clear. Returning to base. I stayed on the line, begging Daniel to answer. Nothing. I thought it was over. Again. But just before the line went dead, I heard it. So faint, I almost missed it. Not his voice. Not backward. Not fractured. A whisper. Low. Close. Curling against my ear like breath. Next time, it's you. The line clicked off, and the board went dark. I sat there for hours, staring at the empty screen, knowing the truth no one else wanted to admit. Daniel Harper hadn't died in those woods. The forest had kept him, and now it knew me. It started like any other night. I was at the desk, watching the board light up, voices spilling in one after another. The routine calls, car accidents, neighbors fighting, lost dogs. Things you can half listen to, things you can shake off by the time the sun comes up. But then I got the call that didn't sound like the others. A woman's voice, shaky, breathless. She gave me her name, her address, and then said, "There's someone upstairs. They won't stop banging." At first, I thought it was another domestic disturbance. A couple fighting, maybe furniture being thrown. It's not uncommon. But then she said something that made my stomach tighten. That apartment is supposed to be empty. I asked her to explain. She said the tenant above her had moved out 2 months ago. She even saw the landlord change the locks. Nobody had moved back in. But tonight, there was noise, heavy footsteps, dragging, slams against the walls that shook her light fixtures. I could hear it in the background as she spoke. A dull, rhythmic thud, like someone was pacing, stomping, then pausing, only to start again. I asked her if she was sure no one had broken in. "I don't think so," she whispered. "I would have heard the door. It's something else. It doesn't sound right." Her words stuck with me. I kept her on the line while I dispatched an officer. The nearest unit said they'd be there in about 15 minutes. In the meantime, I tried to calm her down, but I couldn't, because the noises were getting louder. I could hear them clearly now, even over her phone. Long, dragging sounds across the floorboards, like furniture being shoved. Then sudden bursts of pounding, so violent I thought the ceiling above her would cave in. And then, silence. Not just from the apartment above, from her too. I called her name, asked if she was still there. Her breathing came back, quick and shallow. "It stopped," she whispered. "It knows I'm listening." Those words chilled me. I don't know why. Maybe it was the certainty in her voice. I told her to stay calm, to stay on the line until the officer arrived. But the silence stretched on, heavy and unnatural. And then I heard it. Another sound, but not above her, behind her. Through the phone, faint and low, came a slow creak. The sound of a door opening somewhere in her apartment. She gasped, whispered that she was alone, that every door in her place had been shut. The phone filled with the sound of her running, her breath ragged, the clatter of her locking herself in the bathroom. She begged me not to hang up. I promised her I wouldn't. I could hear her crying softly, trying to keep quiet. On the other end of the radio, the responding unit said they were pulling up now, I told her, tried to reassure her. But then came another sound. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not on her bathroom door. Above it. In the ceiling. Right where the apartment above her would be. She broke into muffled sobs, whispering, "Please, please, make it stop." The officer radioed in that he was at her door. I told her told her to unlock it, to let him in. But she didn't move. She kept whispering, "It's in here! It's already in here!" Her voice was fading, almost swallowed by the static. I shouted for her to go to the officer, begged her not to stay put. The radio clicked again. The officer said he'd cleared the building. Said the upstairs apartment was locked tight, dust on the floor, no signs of anyone inside. He knocked on her door for 5 minutes. No answer. She never came out. Her phone stayed open, though, and for a long time I sat there listening. No crying, no footsteps, just the faintest sound of something moving, slow and deliberate, across the line, like weight shifting on old wood, coming from above. I couldn't shake that call. The officer swore the upstairs apartment was empty. Locked from the outside, dust on the floor, no footprints. He said he checked everything twice, even knocked on the walls, and it was dead silent up there. But I knew what I heard. The banging, the dragging, the knocks above the woman's bathroom door, and then her voice, trembling, saying, "It's already in here," and then nothing. Her phone stayed open for hours after the officer left. I couldn't bring myself to hang up. I just sat there with my headset on, listening to that dead line, except it wasn't dead. At first, it was just static, a soft hiss like the empty space between radio stations, but then breathing. Not hers. This was deeper, heavier, like someone filling their lungs in long, ragged pulls. I thought maybe it was my own breath echoing back at me through the line. I even tested it, held my breath, leaned away, counted out seconds in silence. The breathing didn't stop. It kept going, steady, low, as if someone else was on the other end, pressed against the phone, waiting. I recorded it. That's protocol. Anytime we get strange background noise, we log it, but I didn't tell anyone right away because I knew how it would sound. They'd say it was interference, a crossed line, some idiot messing with us. But the thing is, the call was still open. Hours later. The phone had never disconnected. The woman never came back on the line. And yet, the breathing stayed. I sat there with my headset on, long after my shift was supposed to end, listening. Every so often it would change, sometimes faster, almost frantic. Other times slower, dragging, like whoever it was had fallen asleep. And then, once, around 3 in the morning, it wasn't breathing at all. It was humming, so faint, I almost missed it. A single low note, stretched thin, like someone humming through their teeth. No melody, no rhythm, just a sound made to prove that it was there. I took the headset off. I couldn't keep it on after that, but when I left, I transferred the line to recording. The next day, I came in early. I told myself it was because I needed to hear what I'd caught, that I was just doing my job. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I needed proof that I hadn't imagined it. So I pulled the recording, sat there with the headphones clamped tight, listening. The breathing was all there. The strange rhythm, the slow inhale, the rattling exhale. And then, after 2 hours of silence, came the humming. It crawled right through the speakers. My skin prickled. My throat tightened, because this wasn't just some background noise. There was intention in it. Whoever it was, they wanted to be heard. I played it again and again, staring at the screen. Every time I hit that part, my stomach knotted tighter. And then, on maybe the 5th listen, I noticed something else. Beneath the humming, a voice, not speaking, not clear, more like a whisper buried under static. But the cadence was there. Words. I turned the volume up as far as it would go, pressed the speakers against my ears, and strained to catch it. At first, nothing but hiss. Then the faintest shape of sound. 3 words. Let me in. I ripped the headphones off and shoved my chair back. The room was empty, but I felt eyes on me, heavy, like something waiting just outside the glass. I sat there frozen until the hum of the fluorescent lights reminded me where I was. The dispatch floor, 4 walls, nothing else. Still, I didn't tell anyone. How could I? Hey, boss, I've got a recording of a deadline where someone whispers, "Let me in." Yeah, that would have gone over real well. So I kept it to myself. But that night, the call came back. The same number, the same line. I stared at it flashing on the board. No one else moved to answer. It was mine. When I picked up, there was nothing at first. Just silence, then the breathing. Slow. Heavy. Like it had been waiting for me. I whispered into the mic without meaning to. "What do you want?" The breathing hitched. Quicker now. Excited. And then I heard the knock. Not through the headset. Above me, right over my desk. 3 slow knocks in the ceiling tiles. Just like the woman had described in her bathroom. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. Because for the first time I realized maybe the noise wasn't coming from the apartment above. Maybe it was coming through it. I thought I was losing my grip. After the breathing, the humming, the whisper caught on the recording, I told myself I'd finally had enough. I couldn't handle it alone anymore. So I pulled the property records for the building. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted proof that the tenant upstairs was real, that this wasn't just some phantom noise bleeding through bad wiring. But when the report came back, my stomach dropped. There were no tenants, not just now, not in years. That apartment had never been rented, not once. It was listed as vacant since the complex opened. I stared at the paper, the dates, the manager's signatures. Decades of nothing. No leases, no names, nothing at all. So who called me that night? Who screamed into the phone that the walls were moving? And who was breathing into the line hours after she'd gone silent? I kept the report in my desk. I didn't show anyone, because once again, I knew how it would sound. We get prank calls all the time. People drunk, high, lost, lonely. But this wasn't that. The problem was, I couldn't stop listening. Every night the same number blinked on the board, always around midnight. And every night I answered. It was never the woman again. It was just the sound of someone close. So close I could almost hear their lips brush the receiver. Sometimes it was breathing, sometimes humming. Sometimes that whisper, threading through static. But one night, it changed. I said, 911, what's your emergency? And the line was quiet. So quiet I almost thought it had cut off. Then I heard it. Not breathing, not humming, just a voice. My voice, repeating me, word for word, with a half-second delay. 911, what's your emergency? I froze. I thought maybe my equipment was broken. Maybe I was caught in some feedback loop. But then I tried something. I whispered into the mic, "Who are you?" And half a second later, my voice came back. But not as I'd said it. It was warped, dragged out, deeper than it should have been. "Who are you?" I tore the headset off. My heart was hammering so hard I felt it in my ears. That night, I didn't answer the next call. I let it ring. I let it sit flashing on the board until it died away. But I didn't sleep. Because when I went home, the phone on my nightstand lit up. The number on the screen, the same one from the board. I didn't answer. I couldn't. It rang until the battery died. The next day, I came back in and pulled the log. The system showed no such call. Nothing had come through to my console, but I'd seen it. The number. The same one from that apartment. It followed me home. The calls didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. Some nights, it was the same thing. The breathing, the hum. Other nights, it was the warped echo of my own words. But then came the knock. At first, it was on the line. A sharp, 3-beat rapping sound, like knuckles on wood. But then, as I sat, at my desk, headset on, I heard the same knock, not through the phone. Behind me. I spun around. Empty room. Everyone else was gone. I was on the graveyard shift, alone on the floor. When I turned back, the line was dead. I told myself I was imagining it. lack of sleep, nerves, stress. But the next night, the call came again. And this time, the voice on the other end didn't mimic me. It spoke first. "I can see you." I ripped the headset off and slammed the call closed, but it didn't matter. Because that night at 2:17 a.m., my cell phone rang. Same number. When I answered, the voice whispered into my ear, "Still can." After that, I started keeping the lights on at home. I checked the locks twice, 3 times before bed. I unplugged the landline. I silenced my cell. None of it mattered, because the calls weren't just in the system anymore. They were in my house. Every night the sound came from somewhere new. Sometimes it was in the walls, sometimes above the ceiling. Once, I swear it was in the vent by my bed. The same low hum, the same whisper. "Let me in." The walls of the apartment complex weren't keeping it in anymore. It was spreading. And somehow it knew my name. I've worked dispatch for years, and I've heard people cry on the line more times than I can count. You learn to tune it out. You don't mean to. God knows you don't. But if you let every scream, every sob, every broken voice bury itself inside you, you wouldn't last a week on the job. But there are some calls you never forget. Some voices carve their way so deep into you, it's like they're still clinging to the wires, waiting to be heard. This was one of them. It was just after 2 in the morning when the line lit up. I hit the button, headset tight against my ear. 911, what's your emergency? All I heard at first was crying. Heavy, broken sobs like the kind that shake your whole body. I waited a moment, then tried again. "Ma'am, can you hear me? What's your emergency?" Her voice cracked through the line, thin and trembling. "My baby. I can't find my baby." I straightened in my chair, adrenaline kicking in. Missing child calls hit different. They cut through all the routine, all the numbness, and leave nothing but urgency. "Okay, I need you to stay calm. Where are you right now?" "I'm at the river," she sobbed. I turned around for just a second, and now he's gone. He's gone. Her words tripped over each other, falling into panic. I forced my own voice to steady, calm, measured, the anchor she needed. "Ma'am, listen to me. What river are you near? Tell me exactly where you are." She sniffed hard, gasping for air. I heard the rush of water in the background, loud, fast, like it was just feet away from her. The Calder. By the bridge. I typed fast, sending the address to the system, pushing it out to units on patrol. "All right. Officers are on their way. Can you tell me your name?" A pause. Just the sound of water. Then, quietly, "Lydia." "Okay, Lydia, you're not alone. We're going to find your child. What's his name?" Another sob. "Evan." My throat tightened. I kept typing. "How old is Evan?" 6. Her voice cracked on the word. "Okay. I need you to stay right where you are. Don't go into the water. Do you hear me?" I already looked. I called for him and she broke down again, the sobs almost choking her words. I tried to ground her. "Lydia, listen. Help is on the way. Just keep talking to me. When did you last see Evan?" Her breathing hitched. I heard fabric rustle, like she was twisting her clothes in her hands. "Just a minute ago. He was right here. He was standing right here." "Was he playing near the bank? Did he go into the water?" I don't know. I turned around, and he was gone." Every word was jagged, tearing out of her like glass. The sound of the river grew louder. I imagined her pacing near the edge, eyes darting back and forth, scanning the darkness. I tried to keep my own heartbeat steady. "Lydia, listen to me. Stay on the phone. The officers are close. Do not go into the river. It's dangerous." For a few seconds, she didn't answer. Then faintly, I heard her whisper, "I can still hear him." Her voice had changed, softer, hollow. "Lydia, you hear your son?" "Yes." Her words cracked. "He's calling for me." A cold weight sank in my stomach. "Where do you hear him, Lydia?" "In the water." I gripped the edge of the desk. Do not go in. Do you hear me? Stay where you are." But she wasn't listening anymore. Her voice grew fainter, muffled, like she was turning away from the phone. "Evan? Evan, baby, I'm here." I heard the splash. I shouted into the headset, useless, my own voice echoing back at me. "Lydia, stay out of the water. Help is almost there." The sound of rushing current filled my ears. The phone shook with static, her breath ragged, desperate. "Evan, hold on." Another splash. Then nothing but the river. I sat frozen, my own pulse hammering, until I heard the radio crackle. Units arrived. They reported a woman's car parked by the bridge, door wide open, phone on the ground. But no sign of Lydia, no sign of Evan. Not that night. Not ever. The call was logged, the search filed, and the report closed like all the others. Another missing person? Another open wound that never really healed. But I couldn't shake it. The way her voice broke. The way she whispered she could hear her. Son, and that sound, the splash, burned into my memory. Because I knew what a body sounded like hitting the water. And that wasn't it. That splash was small, too small, like the sound of a child's. Hands, reaching up from underneath. I thought I'd heard it all before. I thought nothing could shake me anymore. But when I replay that night in my head, it always starts the same way. Silence. The line didn't cut off when Lydia went into the river. It stayed open. For a few seconds, all I heard was rushing water, the kind of sound that swallows everything around it. Then, faint and jagged, her voice broke through. "Evan!" The desperation in it made my chest tighten. She wasn't calling into the dark anymore. She was inside it, fighting it. I clenched the headset against my ear, straining to catch every sound. My own voice was loud, too loud, echoing in the room. "Lydia! Stay calm, get back to the bank!" But she didn't answer me. The microphone picked up splashing, hard and frantic, water slapping against her arms. Every thrash carried straight into my headset like I was right there, standing in the river with her. Then came the scream, raw, broken, not just fear, pain. Like something had touched her, dragged across her skin. I stood up without even realizing it, one hand gripping the edge of the console, knuckles white. "Lydia, hold on." "Officers are almost there," the river answered back, its roar filling every space between her cries. Then, clearer than before, her voice pierced through. "I feel him!" Her words were strangled, bubbling with water. "He's here. I feel his hands." I froze. A chill spread across my spine, because her scream didn't sound like relief. It sounded like terror. The line shook with splashing, her breath sharp and broken. "He's pulling me, he's—" The rest drowned in a shriek that cut through me. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember moving. I just remember the sound. Her scream shifted, like something dragged her deeper, silencing her halfway through. 1 second she was there. The next, nothing but bubbles and the current. I shouted into the headset again, but it didn't matter. The only reply was the river. I could hear it so clearly. The rush of water, the hiss of movement, and something else, a sound beneath the sound. At first, I thought it was feedback, static breaking through the line. But no, it was lower, heavier, like breathing. I ripped the headset away for a second, heart hammering, then pressed it back against my ear. Yes, it was there, breathing, slow, wet, like lungs struggling beneath water. And then, faint as a whisper, "Help me." Not Lydia, not her voice at all. It was smaller, fragile, a child. I sank into my chair, eyes locked on the console as if I could see him through the screen. My throat went dry. "Evan?" I whispered. Before I could stop myself, the breathing quickened, desperate. Like whoever was on the other end had heard me. "Help me, please, it's dark." I shut my eyes, pressing the heel of my hand against them until I saw stars. This wasn't possible. I'd taken hundreds of calls, heard voices break and distort under static, but nothing like this. And still, the boy's voice pressed on, trembling. "She's here. She's holding me." "Don't let her! Don't let her!" The line cut sharp with thrashing like someone yanked the phone under. Water poured into my ears, filling the silence with chaos. Screams, high, panicked, muffled, echoed through the static. I couldn't tell if it was Lydia or the boy anymore. They blended together, voices breaking, splintering. Then another sound rose beneath it, a groan, deep, ancient. Like the river itself was waking up, I clutched the headset tighter. Stay with me. Please, stay with me. But the voices twisted, overlapping until I couldn't separate them. Lydia screaming, Evan crying, water surging, and under it all that low groan, rattling my bones through the wire. My screen blinked with updates, officers arriving at the bridge, headlights cutting through the dark. They were so close. But the line kept pulling me under, drowning me in sounds that didn't belong to this world. Then, silence, just like that. The water faded. The screams vanished. The breathing stopped. Only the faint hum of the open line remained. An emptiness louder than any noise. I sat there, headset still pressed hard against my ear, waiting for something, anything, to return. But nothing came. Not until the radio crackled with the officer's voice. Dispatch, we're at the riverbank. We've found the car. No sign of the caller. My mouth went dry. I forced words out. Do you see anyone in the water? Any movement? A pause. Then, negative. River's calm. Nothing here. Calm. The word hit me like ice, because in my ears just moments before, that river had been alive, thrashing, pulling, hungry. I lowered the headset slowly, my hand shaking. The line was still open, the timer still ticking, but no one was there anymore. I stared at it, heart pounding in my throat, knowing I should end the call, log it, move on. But I couldn't bring myself to press the button, because I knew the second I did, I'd never hear it again. That voice, that boy, begging me to pull him out of the dark. It's strange how silence lingers after a call like that. You hang up and the room doesn't feel empty. It feels wrong, like the air itself is listening. After Lydia's line went dead, I thought I'd never hear from her again. The report came back just like I expected. No signs of a struggle, no footprints on the bank except hers, and no trace of her child. The officers wrote it off as a drowning. Case closed. But the call never left me. I replayed it every night, even when I didn't mean to. The splash of water, her scream cutting short, and most of all, the boy's voice. Fragile, broken, whispering into my ear. Help me. Please. It's dark. No matter how many times I reminded myself that audio can distort, that fear twists the mind into hearing things that aren't there. I knew what I heard, and that made it worse. Because if I was right, then someone, something, was still out there, waiting in that current. I tried to move on. I forced myself to take other calls, to listen to noise complaints and accidents, the normal chaos that usually drowns out memories. But then, days later, it happened again. The phone rang. Line 3. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the second I answered, I froze. Soft sobbing filled my headset, broken breaths catching against a rush of static. What's your emergency? I asked, even though my throat had gone tight. There was a pause. And then, clear as if it had been pulled straight out of that night, I can't find my son. My stomach dropped. It was Lydia's voice, the exact same words. Every syllable fell the same way. The same sharp inhale after can't. The same tremble on son. It wasn't just her voice. It was the same moment. Playing again, I gripped the desk hard, trying to steady myself. Lydia? Her sobs spilled into the line. Please, he was right here. Evan was right here. I felt sick, because I remembered that sentence too, word for word. My heart hammered against my ribs as she kept talking, each word falling into place like pieces of a memory being replayed. It's dark. I don't know where I am. The river hissed faint in the background, just like before. I whispered into the line, barely daring to breathe. This isn't real, but it kept going. Her cries rose. The splash of water grew louder, timed perfectly with the first call. Every sound matched, and then breaking through, his voice, the boy. She's here. She's holding me. Don't let her! Don't let her! I ripped the headset away, nearly throwing it down, my pulse screaming in my ears. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. But when I pressed the headset back, the loop had already restarted. I can't find my son. The same words. The same rhythm, like a tape stuck on repeat. I sat frozen, trapped in that cycle. Her cries, his pleas, the splash, the silence. And then again, starting over, perfectly identical, as though the line had been cut out of time itself. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I couldn't tell anymore. My supervisor came by once, asking if I was okay. I must have waved him off because he didn't push. Maybe he saw something in my face, something that told him not to ask. The loop didn't stop. Even when I muted my end, even when I pulled the headset down around my neck, the faint sound still leaked through. Over and over, I can't find my son. By the fourth repeat, I was shaking. By the seventh, I was whispering along with her without realizing it. By the 10th, I was biting my lip so hard it bled. Just to remind myself I was still here, that I hadn't slipped into the call itself. But the worst part wasn't the loop. It was the changes. They were small at first. Barely there, a syllable stretched too long. A breath that came a second late. The splash of water echoing a little differently. By the 12th loop, the sobbing sounded heavier, wet and ragged, like Lydia had been crying for days instead of minutes. By the 15th, the boy's voice broke into a scream I hadn't heard before. Sharper, higher, clawing at the edges of my mind. And by the 20th, there was something else, a third voice, low, distant, beneath the others. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt them. A vibration through the wire seeping into my bones. And every time the loop restarted, that voice grew louder. I sat there, helpless, headset clamped against my ears, listening to the same tragedy repeat itself while something darker crept closer each time. Finally, I tore the headset off and slammed the call to an end. Hands trembling so hard I could barely press the button. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It was heavy, expectant, like the air in the room was waiting for me to admit I'd heard it too. I logged the call like I was supposed to, typed in the details with shaking fingers. But I didn't tell the truth. I didn't write that the call was identical to the first one, that it repeated over and over, that another voice joined in, crawling out of the static like something rising from the riverbed. I just wrote, caller disconnected. Possible prank. But I knew it wasn't a prank, because when I went home that night, exhausted and hollow, I sat on my couch in the dark and thought I heard it again from my own phone, faint, just for a second. A woman sobbing. I can't find my son. And I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. When you're new on the job, the headset feels heavier than it should. Not just the weight of the plastic, but the weight of knowing a stranger's voice might be the only thing between life and death. I was a rookie, barely 3 months into the night shift, still fumbling with the system, still second-guessing every decision I made. The veterans told me it would get easier. They said, the calls will blur together after a while. Car crashes, domestics, overdoses, they'll all sound the same eventually, but this call, this wasn't one of those. It started with static, not unusual on its own. Headsets crackle sometimes, the system bleeds, but this wasn't the normal background hiss. It had rhythm. A low surge, followed by a pause, then another surge. Like breathing, but metallic. I glanced at the console, frowning. Channel 7 was active. That didn't make sense. Channel 7 wasn't in use. Not for dispatch, not for officers, not for anything. It hadn't been assigned in years. Still, the light blinked. I hesitated before answering. My supervisor wasn't at the desk. The room was quiet except for the hum of machines. I thought about ignoring it, but something about the sound tugged at me, so I patched through. Wanted dispatch. What's your emergency? For a moment, nothing but static. Then faint. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. Help! My hand froze on the console. The word dragged through distortion, broken into pieces, but it was there. I swallowed. Caller, can you repeat that? What's your emergency? Another pause. Then a rush of noise, like water pouring across the line. And beneath it, can't breathe! I sat bolt upright. My throat went dry. It wasn't just noise. It was a voice. And not just a random fragment either. Someone was out there. Someone who needed help. I checked the console again, trying to trace it. But the signal was wrong. It wasn't coming from a number. No location data. No ID. Just channel 7. "Caller, stay with me," I said, forcing calm into my voice even though my chest was tight. "Can you tell me where you are?" The static swelled. And then, another fragment broken, words buried in the distortion. Too dark. The hairs on the back of my neck lifted. "Where is it dark? Are you inside a building?" Nothing. Just the hiss. And then, faint, a sound I'll never forget. A scream. Not a sharp, panicked scream like the ones I'd already heard on other calls. This was muffled, strangled, like someone trying to scream underwater. It cut off in an instant. I ripped the headset back, my own pulse hammering in my ears. The console still blinked. The channel was still open, but there was only silence now. I sat there for what felt like hours, waiting, listening. My palms were sweaty against the desk. Finally, I switched over, pulled up the system logs. I thought maybe it was a cross line, interference, a bleed through from another channel. That can happen. It had to be that. But the log was empty. Channel 7 didn't exist in the system anymore. When my supervisor finally came back, I tried to explain it. I told him I'd heard something. A voice, words, a scream. He gave me this look, the same one veterans give rookies when they panic over nothing. He said, "It was bleed. Happens all the time. You'll learn to tune it out." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. Because part of me was afraid he was right. That maybe I'd imagined the voice. Maybe I'd wanted so badly to do my job right. To save someone that I'd made it up. But later that night, when the calls slowed and the floor went quiet, I made the mistake of putting the headset back on. I tuned to channel 7, and there it was. Static, slow, measured, like breathing. And under it, just before I pulled the set away, a whisper that slid into my ear like a blade. "Still here." I didn't sleep when I got home. I just lay in bed listening to the silence, wondering if maybe silence isn't silence at all. Maybe it's just static, waiting to be tuned in, and maybe I already had. When I first heard that voice on channel 7, I told myself I'd forget it. I told myself it was just interference, like my supervisor said. A fluke. Something that would fade into the mess of other strange calls. The ones no one talks about, but everyone has. But I couldn't let it go. For days afterward, I thought I heard that faint static in the quiet. In the hum of the refrigerator at home. In the buzz of the overhead lights at work. Even when I turned the headset off, I could still feel the ghost of it pressing into my ear. I should have ignored it. I should have forced myself to move on. But I couldn't. That's how I ended up in the archives. The dispatch center had an old records room. Floor-to-ceiling shelves stacked with tapes and transcripts that no one bothered with anymore. Most of them had been digitized years ago, but the physical copies were still there, gathering dust. I told myself I was just being thorough, just curious. But really, I think I already knew what I was looking for. It took hours, combing through faded labels, squinting at handwriting that had long since bled into the paper. Most of the boxes were just the usual stuff. Burglaries, fires, drunk drivers. Then I found it. A box shoved against the back wall stamped with a fading date, 1983. Inside, a reel-to-reel tape. Yellowed paper labels barely clinging to it. Scribbled on the side, in ink so faint I had to tilt it under the light to read Channel 7. My stomach dropped, hands shaking. I carried it over to the playback machine. The thing was ancient, smelled like rust and dust. I threaded the tape through, hit play. For a long time there was only silence, then a hiss, low and steady. Static. My pulse spiked, and then, "Help!" I froze. It was the same voice. The same strained breaking word I'd heard nights ago. "Can't breathe!" The machine hissed and crackled, warping with age, but it didn't matter. The words were there. Identical. Too dark. I staggered back from the machine, heart hammering. I knew those words. I'd heard them myself. But this tape was from 1983. The voice on it. It was the exact same call. Word for word, I hit stop, stared at the machine like it had grown teeth. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. I told myself maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone had recorded the old tape, spliced it back into the system somehow. Maybe what I'd heard wasn't real, but then I thought about the scream. That wet, muffled scream that had pierced my headset, and when I replayed the tape, I heard it again, the same scream. I slammed stop, but the sound seemed to hang in the air, seeping into the walls of the room. I sat there for a long time, staring at the machine, trying to convince myself I hadn't uncovered something impossible. Because if that call had been logged in the 80s, and I'd heard it again now, then what was it? It wasn't a live call. It wasn't bleed. It was something that didn't belong to time. And the worst part? The old logbook was still in the box with the tape. I opened it, flipping through brittle pages until I found the entry. The dispatcher's handwriting was rushed, almost frantic. Untraceable signal on Channel 7. Female caller. Distorted. Voice reporting, can't breathe. Possible interference. No ID. Line terminated with scream. Case unresolved. The dispatcher had signed his name at the bottom. I didn't recognize it, but it didn't matter, because at the very end of the entry, written in shaking pen, he had added something else. She said it again. Off the record, she whispered. Still here. My mouth went dry. That was the exact same thing I'd heard in my headset. Not just the words, the way it was said, like someone was standing just behind me, whispering into my ear. I slammed the logbook shut and shoved everything back into the box. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely fit the lid. I told myself I'd never touch it again, that I'd bury it back on the shelf, pretend I never saw it. But when I walked out of that room, I swear I heard it. Not from the tape, not from the machine, from the dark corner of the archives where the shelves swallowed the light. Still here. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just walked faster, clutching my hands into fists so no one would see them shake. That night, when I tried to sleep, I thought about the dispatcher who wrote that note in 1983. I wondered if he'd ever told anyone, if anyone believed him, or if, like me, he learned that silence isn't silence at all. It's static, and once you've tuned into it, you can't turn it off. For nights, I tried to ignore it. I turned off my headset the moment I clocked out, shut off the radio at home, even left the TV muted just to give myself silence. But silence doesn't exist anymore. Not for me, because no matter where I went, I could still hear it. The static. It crept in under the edges of sound, thin and steady, like the world itself had a hum I'd never noticed until that night on Channel 7. I told myself I wouldn't answer it again. That's what I promised. But promises don't hold up when the static won't let you sleep. 3 nights ago, I broke. It was the middle of my shift. The room was quiet, the other dispatchers buried in their own calls. That's when I heard it again, the hiss, low, faint, sliding into my ear like a knife. I froze, every nerve on fire. Help! The voice was back. I pressed my palms into my eyes, shaking my head, telling myself not to. Don't answer. Don't engage. But then, please, someone, please answer me. It sounded weaker this time, like the signal was dying, like the caller was dying, and against every instinct I had, I lifted the mic. This is dispatch. Can you hear me? For a moment, only static. I almost thought the line had gone dead. Then I heard it, my own voice. This is dispatch. Can you hear me? The blood drained from my body. I gripped the desk, hard enough that my nails scraped wood. No, I whispered. That's not possible. But it was. Through the static, I kept hearing it. My voice, repeating the words back to me. Slurred, delayed, like someone had taken a recording of me and dragged it through water. And then, over the warped echo of my own tone, I heard something worse. Please, help me! It was still me, but not the me who sat at that desk. This version of my voice was broken, frantic. It was me, but begging. I ripped the headset off, heart hammering, bile stinging the back of my throat. The others in the room didn't even look up. No one else heard it. I sat there staring at the headset on the desk, terrified to put it back on, more terrified not to. Finally, with shaking hands, I slid it over my ears again. Still here. The whisper was mine, but it didn't come from my throat. It came from the static. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to force my voice calm, professional. Who is this? The reply made my blood freeze. You know who this is? It was my voice, saying words I hadn't said, and then it began to beg again. I can't get out. Please, get me out. Too dark, too cold. My stomach twisted. I'd heard those words before, on the first night, in the first transmission. Only now, they were mine. It wasn't just replaying the old call, it was replaying me. Like somehow I'd already made that call. Like somewhere in the static. I was the one trapped, I whispered. Where are you? The voice cracked. Behind the glass, can't breathe. I looked around the dispatch room, eyes darting across the walls, the windows, the reflective black of the turned-off monitors. Behind the glass. I yanked the headset off again, clutching it to my chest, my pulse racing. I thought about the old tape, the logbook from 1983, about the dispatcher who wrote that she whispered still here. Had he heard his own voice too? Had he realized what I was starting to realize? That maybe the calls weren't coming from strangers at all. That maybe they came from us, from the ones who listened too long, the ones who answered back. I wish I could say I walked away then, that I burned the tape, smashed the headset, left the job behind. But I didn't, because a part of me needed to know. If that was really me, trapped in the static, begging to be let out, what did that mean for the me sitting in the chair? Which one was real? I put the headset back on one last time. The static roared in my ear, deep and endless, then faint beneath it. Please, don't leave me here! My own voice breaking apart, drowning. I wanted to answer. I wanted to promise I'd pull myself free. But the truth is, I didn't know how, and maybe I already never did. Because even now, when the headset is off, when I'm far from the dispatch room, I can still hear it. That begging voice. My voice, calling from the static. And sometimes when the house is quiet, I swear I hear myself whisper back. Still here.